afternoon edition of the show where there's a lot of breaking news that's happening. Sue is also back in her chair this afternoon. We're happy to have you back.
Thank you.
And Fred Bottomer, the Hall of Famer, is in the studio with Ethan as well. I mentioned breaking news. That has to do down in Texas with the Carmelo Anthony trial, which went to the jury just this morning, right, Fred?
Probably this afternoon. I mean, it was a very fast verdict.
And they kind of knew once. So what happened was a couple of things. This is the kid that is accused, African-American kid, accused of going into a tent in Frisco, Texas during a track meet. And there was there's disputed facts. Well, I don't know that there are, but the defense tried to seem like there were disputed facts of what happened. And Carmelo Anthony pulled out a knife and he stabbed this guy, Austin Metcalf, in the heart. I mean, the jury got to see some of the autopsy photos, and apparently they were essentially, covering their eyes because some of this was so horrible. But what happened earlier is the judge had allowed for the possible verdict being manslaughter. When the verdict came in so fast, we were told it was going to be read at 2. It probably didn't get read till after 2:30. But we don't have any reaction from inside the courtroom because there were no cameras in the courtroom. There's also a gag order that's in effect. So in the aftermath of all this, I don't know how much they might say. I really thought because the jury was asking for the manslaughter thing that's the route that they would go. But look, the facts really are not disputable in this case. And, they've made it into this big deal about race, right? This has become a case about race when it really shouldn't be. What I would say is if this were, 2 white kids that got into this, it would be murder charge, and the white kid would be charged with murder. If it was 2 black kids that were involved, same thing would happen. I mean, it doesn't change the nature of this, and making it, in this case, about race is just kind of ridiculous. I don't know what happened. I mean, quite honestly, it's very tragic from this standpoint. This kid, Carmelo Anthony, who's 19 now, he was 17 when this happened. He threw his life away. I mean, he had a 3.7 grade point average.
Oh, my gosh.
He apparently was pretty smart. They tried to make it about self-defense. I don't know if there was mental illness. He broke down in tears today on the stand. Honestly, you don't see that very often. You see a lot of people that are found guilty, and what happens, not on the stand, Freddie, in the courtroom. He did not take the stand. I saw your facial reaction to what I said. But in the courtroom, they are describing, that he kind of lost it and broke down in tears. And I can understand that there's human aspects of this case that are very tough. But what's unfortunate is they tried to make it all about race, right? And then the other side comes in, and when I say the other side, there's people, and unfortunately, some of these people aren't the best people on the planet, right? They're not very fine people. Some of the white supremacist types on podcasts, et cetera, get down there and they're holding signs, and they make this thing more tense than it needs to be. Quite honestly, we look at the cameras right now, there were not a lot of people that were outside of this courtroom, right? There are 100 people, Fred, is what some estimate was. So Brooke Taylor, we're going to have Phil Holloway. Hopefully, he's on with Megyn Kelly doing something live because he works with her podcast. But Brooke Taylor on Fox kind of described a little bit of what happened in the aftermath because there were some, scuffles that broke out.
The crowd, I want to say it's about 100 people or so with their phones in the air, moving closer to see what this fight is all about. But this case, it has caused high emotion on both sides. It's become a racial case, so that has heightened things as well. And it looks like my photographer is telling me they are arresting someone right now. See if we can get a little bit closer. Like I mentioned, I'm not surprised that they made this arrest quickly because deputies here have been making sure that Sorry, we are moving a little bit closer. I'm not surprised that this arrest happened quickly because deputies have made their presence clear that they are not going to tolerate any form of chaos.
Yeah, so and there was a lot of police presence outside of that. And you mentioned the gag order. So why the gag order?
So right now there is a gag order in place. So no one is allowed to speak to the until the sentencing portion of this. So I don't expect to hear from any family members or any of the prosecution or the defense because of that gag order.
I don't understand that at all. That doesn't really make any sense to me whatsoever.
And they've gone right into the sentencing hearing right now.
Oh, they have?
So,
I don't think they could do that.
Yeah, they went right into it.
Okay.
Wow.
Now they say, well, this is always a range of punishment. So the range of punishment is 5 to 99 years or life in prison. Okay. So that's interesting, Fred. I did not know that. Well,
no,
Phil,
they just showed it.
let's hope that let's hope that Phil can join us because he might be busy with Megan. It is an interesting case. I don't know why it got so, well, I do. It's a black kid and a white kid, right? You're going to have that, and the racial flames are going to be stoked. Speaking of racial flames, let's talk a little bit about yesterday. You weren't here yesterday, and I talked about the situation in Shrewsbury. Up until the point that I talked about yesterday, what happened at Sky Zone, no other media sources were covering this. That has changed at this point. The Post-Dispatch had a piece that was cleared late in the afternoon. I have some audio from Channel 5. I know Channel 4 did something as well. I'm assuming Fox did, but I don't know. But Sue, are you caught up on all that?
No,
Do you know what happened?
I know nothing.
You know anything about that?
Nope.
Okay, here you go. What happened is there was a 6-7 party that was announced at Sky Zone in Shrewsbury. This is very personal for me. My daughter goes there a couple of times a week. Like on a day where it's rainy and, the kids can't do anything, she'll go up to Sky Zone. It's like a trampoline park. You know what
Oh,
this is.
yeah,
Have you ever
yeah,
been
yeah.
in these things before?
Yes.
Yeah, so they had, well, here, I'll play you a little of the audio here. This is the Channel 5 report.
Let the window up.
A battle of the brawls spilling into this Shrewsbury parking lot. That is what Rashida Glover, a mother of two, saw outside her window Sunday afternoon.
I had a great time there, but I noticed something was wrong as we was leaving the facility, and I seen an angry mob outside, a bunch of young teenagers, and they was mad and angry.
A symbol of Sunday Fun Day turning into absolute chaos. Glover says she was trapped in her car after leaving Shrewsbury Sky Zone's 6-7 day celebration. Shrewsbury police say the facility was not prepared for what happened next.
So there's a little bit of a blame game. They had 350 people outside. They had capacity inside. The kids that were gathering didn't like it. They started breaking out in fights. Then they took over the businesses, Aldi and Walmart, and the businesses had to close for the rest of the day. There is, and this is one of my least favorite parts of the story, where I could maybe say it's my favorite part of the story sarcastically. There was a 12-year-old girl, Sue, who lives up in Florissant, who had seen the fights on social media and decides to get in an Uber with a knife and take an Uber to Sky Zone to participate in the fight.
Okay, I did hear that part.
Right. So, this is unreal.
And what was it about? Does it matter?
It doesn't matter.
No.
I don't know. I think it was about not being able to be let into Sky Zone. But everything that happened, if you have 8 fights that break out at the same time, and then you can see, I've seen several videos of this, it was chaos. And that mom is describing it accurately. These kids went nuts in this whole shopping center where Aldi and there's a Walmart. And you had, what I should do, and maybe what somebody told me to do this, is FOIA the 911 calls, because I bet there were a lot of interesting 911 calls that were coming in. This, by the way, was not at 11 o'clock at night. It wasn't at 8 o'clock at night. This was in the afternoon, in the middle of the day. Oh, yeah, it's like 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So it's outrageous what happened in this situation. And what I want to know is, this is a legitimate question. How in the hell did all the kids get there?
Yes.
They were described as 10 to 17-year-old kids, right? And I already told you that the 12-year-old jumps in an Uber. Yeah, oh yeah. Well, my daughter is 11 years old.
Yeah.
Okay, so, younger kids go there. But it's just frightening what happened. And by the way, that could have turned a lot worse. It really could have. It could have been very violent. Somebody could have got hurt. Shrewsbury police will, I think, admit that they were overwhelmed. They had to call in some, extra forces from surrounding areas because this all got out of hand very, very quickly. And I guess, you can give them credit for keeping the, keeping the tone down to a certain extent so nobody really got hurt, because I think that's important. So that's just a mess, and we may or may not talk about that as we move along here this afternoon as well. By the way, this is just a kind of a weird story. Okay, Fred, go ahead and tell me what that means.
So I'm going to flip
he
things around.
He just gave me a note.
Yeah,
so
I'm in the middle of texting Phil Holloway and our first guest, Frannie Block. So we're going to flip them. I think Phil says he can go around 3:20.
Okay.
And
all
he's
right.
got 10 minutes at 3:20.
Okay, all right. So we're just flipping those around. Fred is working his magic, but I'm not smart enough just to look at a easy picture here and figure out what's going on. So I apologize for that. But there are a lot of other things that are going on today. You have an attack, which I think maybe broke the ceasefire, and Trump says that there's going to be, a reaction to that. Let's see here. This was something, and I don't know if I have time. I'll just bring this up real quick because I saw this in the Post-Dispatch this morning too. And, people are crazy, okay? And I don't know how you even account for the story that I'm about to tell you here in a couple of minutes. And by the way, we did miss you yesterday, Sue. You'll be back today with Sue's News in the 4 o'clock hour. So a man, this is Dateline Clayton, the local paper. A man on Monday was charged with attacking a McAllister's Deli coworker who got a promotion he was after. Javon Mallory, 31, was charged with first-degree assault and first-degree burglary. He almost killed this woman. So what happened was he goes to the deli. This is on St. Charles Rock Road, 10:30 a.m. Monday. Bridgeton police are the ones that were involved here. He goes into the back office. He closed the door and he locked it. He tells his coworker that he was going to kill her. He grabs her neck with both hands and began strangling her. He wrestled her to the floor and continued strangling her as she went limp. Mallory then stopped when the store's general manager began unlocking the door after hearing the commotion. The GM opened the door and the woman was able to get to her feet. Police say that the general manager locked Mallory in the office until police arrived. He says that he applied for the promotion, was angry that his coworker was promoted instead, and he knew the woman was working and had arrived at McAllister's to kill her. So, he stated that he would have killed her if the GM had not intervened. I'll be very curious. And by the way, this is a guy that, pleaded guilty to first-degree assault, was sentenced to 10 years in prison back in 2014, and he got out. He was actually charged and sentenced for sneaking up on a woman and strangling her in a bathroom at Merrimack Community College. So this guy is unbelievable. Really, when you think about it, I mean, this woman could be dead from that. And I'd be very curious to see, okay, he's in prison for how many years? He didn't do the 10 years, I don't think. And if he did, he's only been out for 2 years. I would hope that there be a pretty stiff sentence and not a pat on the, on the back for something like this, because that is outrageous. Anyway, I just had to tie two crazy, unfortunately, somewhat violent stories together. We'll take a break here. I think we're going to get Phil Holloway. He'll have the latest on the Carmelo Anthony story from down in Texas. Frannie Block from the Free Press is set up because there's an unbelievable story about this this doctor who committed suicide after something that happened that he wasn't proud of, but it didn't seem to rise to the level of malfeasance that would cause him a loss of his career. But he thought it did, and he committed suicide, and his parents are now blaming the employers. It's kind of an interesting case, and a lot of details. We'll get into that. We have, as I mentioned, Sue in the next hour. We get a Tuesday edition of Sue's News. My colleague, Rob Hart, who I'm told we hear sometimes on the little Odyssey news breaks. He's up at WBBM in Chicago. We work together at WTMJ. I'm still very confused on this potential move by the Chicago Bears to Hammond, Indiana. I feel like I'm missing something. I really do, because it seems like one of the dumbest things that the Bears can do. Rob's going to kind of give us a little perspective on that coming up at 4:30.
Well, we had a report of a vehicle fire westbound 70 past 370. Watch for that one in the right lane. And there was a stall eastbound 44 approaching Elm. That one, too, on the right-hand side. Now, if you are just westbound on 64, it's moderate volume, and it's mainly right there at Clayton Skinker. Then things open up a bit. And southbound 270 slowing at the construction zone at Ladue Road, and a little bit of Gravois as well. We've got that ongoing road work on the Illinois side, westbound 5564, and it jams approaching 3rd Street. Eastbound 64 slowing at 255. And Route 3, especially southbound, is really slow at Queenie Avenue right now on the Illinois side due to a slow-moving train. I'm Sue Thomas, and that's traffic. 97.1 FM Talk, St. Louis Conservative.
I want you to take a little time this week and call Generator Supercenter of St. Louis, or stop by the showroom in Chesterfield, or just check out the website, because we are in that period now where we could still have storms that knock the power out. We know what happens during the winter. We also know the power grid has failed in some parts of the country and will probably fail again. Generators is all they do at Generator Supercenter of St. Louis. They sell, they install, they maintain, they monitor these Generac automatic standby generators. They're not portables, very high quality. They'll kick your home back back into power mode with natural gas or propane right away. You don't have to worry about it. You don't have to call the power company. You get 24-hour monitoring. If you're out of town, the food's not going to spoil. You're in a great position. And if you don't think maybe you can afford it, they have a free estimate and payment plans available. Peace of mind, you can't put a price on that, right? So call Generator Supercenter for a free estimate. Tell them you heard about it here on 97.1 FM Talk. 314-499-2020, Generator Supercenter of St. Louis.com. Oh, we're waiting for Phil Holloway to jump on the line with us here. He's been following this Carmelo Anthony situation down in Texas, and I'm actually really, really surprised here. And Phil's going to have to be the one that's filling me in here because they've gone right from the guilty verdict. They came in, really just a little bit more, maybe not even an hour ago into the sentencing hearing. Phil Holloway is with us this afternoon. He's the host of the Megyn Kelly True Crime Show. I know he's been on with Megan here for a while. How are you this afternoon, Phil? A lot of stuff going on at the same time here, right?
Yeah, great. Thanks for having me. Always happy to talk to you. This one, the verdict is no surprise. The 3-hour verdict, the only thing surprising about that is that it was 3 instead of 2. As far as the length of time, I thought it might be a little quicker, but I'm not surprised. Now, here's what's going on. See, the defense made an election to have the jury decide the sentence, which is, it's kind of the way it's done in Texas.
Right.
So the judge doesn't want the jury to have to, keep coming back over and over. So he decided to just move right on into it. Well, what was surprising to me, and apparently we just learned this, that there was only one witness called by the defense in mitigation, and that was Carmelo Anthony's mother, to basically ask the jury for some mercy, and it was short. And now the judge is working on the instructions, and we'll send the jury for deliberations on punishment here shortly if they haven't already started. So that's why they're moving directly into the sentencing phase. He's facing 5 to 99 years or life. He's not eligible for the death penalty because of his age, but if he gets life, he is eligible for parole.
What would your anticipation be on a sentence like this? Or is that just too hard to tell right now?
Well, that's the thing. You can see the jury being, united and coming to a pretty quick conclusion on murder. But when you have moms and dads and you have people who might have sympathies for teenagers, I had a trial one time when I was a prosecutor. I prosecuted a 17-year-old for an armed robbery, and and he had confessed, and the jury kept wanting to hear it over and over and over in the jury room as far as the confession tape. And I had a mother just run out of the jury room just fall on her knees and start sobbing in the hallway, talking about how she couldn't send a young teenager to prison.
Yeah.
And so we do have sympathies that find their ways into the jury room. And that's why the defense asked for jury sentencing versus judicial sentencing. If it were the judge, I know it would be a life sentence immediately. But otherwise, I think it may take a little while. I could be wrong.
Yeah,
As you know, I've been wrong before.
Oh, we both
verdicts,
have. We both have. Right.
But I think the jury may have to give this one a little more thought. I think it's fair to say he's going to spend a long time in prison, and it might be the rest of his life.
It is just a tragedy all along, and it's not impossible to have a little empathy for the entire situation. There's no doubt in my mind that he was guilty and he should be punished. But here you have a 17-year-old kid who's now 19, threw his life away, and was apparently a pretty good student. This whole story that they concocted for self-defense was just nonsense. I don't know what it was in his head. I don't know if there was mental illness that was, talked about during this trial, because they really rested quickly. The defense, they hardly did anything yesterday. So it's a complicated case. It really is.
Well, and I think I now know why he didn't testify, why the defendant did not testify. Normally, if you're going to pursue self-defense as a affirmative defense to a criminal charge, it's kind of important for the defendant to tell the jury, I was in fear of my life and I felt like I had no choice. But if you kind of hedge your bets and you believe the jury's not going to buy that, you do the best you can with other witnesses, but don't put the defendant up to say that if you foresee that same jury having to determine sentence.
Yeah.
Because if he takes the stand and the jury believes he's not being truthful, or you think he's going to have other problems with being impeached during cross-examination, if he's not going to look good on the stand, then maybe you as a matter of trial strategy, you keep him off the stand so that you don't have the jury potentially hating him by the time they have to determine sentence.
From a strategy perspective, that makes sense. Why is there a gag order in this case? Or you think that's only going to be in effect here because the sentencing hasn't been completed? It seems weird because it's also a very, it puts a lot of people under that umbrella, family members, et cetera.
Yeah, I hate gag orders. We can talk for days about these things. I think it's a prior restraint on people's constitutional rights to free speech, and I think that these judges just get too crazy with them, and I think that the Supreme Court at some point is just going to have to say enough. But that being said, the judge, to the extent that he does have a gag order, he wants it to go all the way through the completion of the case, and that would include sentencing. I'm hoping that once all is said and done, we're going to be able to see some of the evidence that was admitted into court, and I don't know if there exist recordings of these witnesses and their testimony, but at some point the public needs to see more about what happened in that courtroom. I'm really, really been out of shape that this was not streamed, because if ever there needed to be a case that was live streamed so the public could see what's going on in that courtroom, this was it.
Yeah, for transparency purposes. Now, one of the things I heard there were people of color, but there was not one black member on the jury. Is there room for any kind of appeal because of that?
No.
Okay.
No, but you have a right to a representative cross sample of the community in your jury pool. But what you do not have a right to is to have jurors on your jury who have told the lawyers during the jury selection, the voir dire process, that they have reservations about convicting a brother or a black man.
Right.
So
I got
you don't have a right to have people on your jury who, just because they're black, okay, even if they have an expressed bias to that degree, they are subject to being struck for cause because they can't follow the judge's instructions. Because guess what? The judge's instructions are leave your biases at the door. And so if they tell you right out of the gate that they have that bias, you don't have a right to have them on your jury. So there is no right to have a jury that looks like you. And now, this was not an all-white jury.
No, I know.
It has. Well, some have reported that it was. And it's not. But it's just that it didn't. It's only like 1%, maybe 2% blacks in the community. So it's not surprising that you didn't have one that made it onto the jury.
And it's frustrating and you knew from the very beginning. Look, I talked about this. You and I probably talked about it from the very beginning of when this stabbing took place. You knew there were going to be racial components because of the suspect and the victim. But look, there were black teammates of this poor kid who was stabbed in the heart that testified in tearful testimony about their teammates. So race became a factor, I think, outside of the courtroom. But this is a case of whether or not this was, someone who is guilty of the crime of murder, and the jury has decided, yes, he is, and now we're going to find out what the punishment is. But, Phil, I appreciate your help this afternoon. Obviously, all this just breaking in the last 90 minutes or so.
All right. Happy to help you anytime.
All right. Take care. That's Phil Holloway. He's the host of the Megyn Kelly True Crime Show. He's been with us for a long time and is always great. Former district attorney, former cop as well down in Georgia. So here we wait. I don't know if this is something that, the recommendation comes down today. Fred, have you heard any kind of timetable? Because I've covered trials for a long time. I don't really remember where a guilty verdict has gone right into a sentencing hearing with a jury.
Yeah, I don't think so either. So we don't know, but he's keeping everyone there, so it could be today.
A lot of times, in death penalty cases, you definitely have it pretty much go very quickly to the jury as well. So maybe there's just a similarity because it's the punishment and the defense wanted that. But I have a hard time believing we'll have a sentence by the end of today, right?
We've said that before.
I know, and then we're wrong about it, right?
Yes.
We'll see what happens.
Crews are wrapping up a vehicle fire westbound 70 past 370. The right lane is blocked and the right shoulder. Traffic is slow through there, and it goes not quite back to 94. Now, westbound 70 in the city, also a little bit slow. We had an accident reported near West Florissant. So if you're traveling in that area, that's the delay. Now, 6440 is the usual volume. Hampton out through McCausland, and then you get a break, and it's a little slow out at Lake St. Louis Boulevard. Now, southbound 270, we did have an accident reported approaching Ladue Road, some volume behind that, and an accident on southbound 141, really close to Vance Road. You know what that did. It's a big jam there. And westbound 44 is slowing at 270. 55 actually looks pretty good. On the Illinois side, it's going to be rough for a while. We've got road work over there, and eastbound 70 slows at 64. Eastbound 5564 slows at 70. Eastbound 64 slows at 157, all due to road work. And southbound Route 3 is really jammed at Queenie, where they have a slow-moving train. I'm Sue Thomas, and that's traffic. 97.1 FM Talk, St. Louis Conservative.
.333, this portion of the show is sponsored by Jerry Kelly Heating, Air Conditioning, Electrical, and Plumbing. Sue, I'm actually telling the truth here. There were like 6 or 7 topics yesterday that I had saved over the weekend to my reading list that I specifically wanted to do with you. And I missed the whole text string on Sunday night, or at least the part where you said I'm off on Monday. So it's literally 3 o'clock yesterday. I'm like, where's Sue? And they're like, oh, yeah, no, they're getting Trent set up here on the board. So I did not know, but there were a lot of things that happened. Like, one is the completion, and we talked about it a little bit a couple of weeks ago, of Sagrada Familia.
Oh,
we've both been there.
So huge.
Right, but that's an interesting, it only took 144 years.
Oh, my gosh. And they're not totally done,
No,
but
I
the
know.
Pope is going to do the
tomorrow.
thing. Yes.
He's going tomorrow. So anyway, there were several things that I held back on because
I love it.
I wanted your opinion. So we'll get to some of that, I think, at 4 o'clock this afternoon. Like I mentioned, my friend Rob Hart, who is an anchor at WBBM in Chicago. This whole Bears moving to Hammond,
I hate
Indiana,
it.
I don't get it. Like, it's one of those, there's a lot of things that I feel like I'm missing on something. One is the Graham Plattner situation in Maine, because that just doesn't make any sense why anyone would support that guy. And the other is the Bears moving to Indiana.
Isn't it just money?
I suppose it is, but what are they doing to their fans? I have no idea. I found a really interesting story, real tragic story that was in the Free Press at the FP.com by Frannie Block, and she joins us this afternoon. It's about a medical student who committed suicide, and the details of the case are rather unusual. Frannie is with us this afternoon. Welcome back to 97.1 FM Talk. How are you?
Doing well, Mark. Thanks so much for having me.
This is a weird situation. It was hard for me not to have, a lot of sadness when I read what happened to this doctor, and I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce his name, but he was a third-year medical student that was called in to meet the dean of Texas Tech University back in July of last year, and I want you to explain what happened here and, how this kind of went forward.
Yes, so this medical student, he was brought in to meet with the dean after a patient had filed a complaint against him alleging inappropriate behavior. And after the meeting with the dean, he went home. He was suspended from all of his clinical rotations, and he didn't really get a chance to defend himself or kind of see all of the evidence presented against himself, though he did offer the dean an explanation. He denied the allegations. But he went home after this meeting with the dean. He actually tried to meet with the school counselor before he went home, and the counselor told him, sorry, you got to fill out some paperwork. You can come back tomorrow. That night at nearly midnight, he then gets an email from the dean of the medical school at Texas Tech in El Paso that basically outlines what consequences he might face for this allegation. And those consequences were as extreme as dismissal from the medical school, essentially the end of his entire medical career after 3 years of medical school. And the email from the dean also included a number for a helpline, a mental health helpline that the university had. But by the time that this email was sent at 11:36 p.m., that helpline was closed. And so this is obviously where the story takes an extremely tragic turn. The next day, he took his own life. And his parents have filed a lawsuit against the university, and they think that the school is to blame for that.
So he leaves a note behind for his parents that says, I failed you, I failed in being a good son. I am facing dismissal from school due to a lapse in professionalism and simply cannot bear the shame. And I guess one of the questions that the paperwork asked him to do, as you reported, it said, look, explain what happened, be accountable and honest. It also asked him to explain what is your plan for this never happening again. And obviously he's in panic mode. Now, let's talk a little bit about what he admitted and what happened here, because he followed this woman on Instagram and then he unfollowed her relatively quickly, right?
Yes. So that's the allegation here at play, is the patient accused him of asking her inappropriate questions about her dating life. And this was for an OB-GYN rotation. So he was doing a patient intake form. And his defense to the dean, which we see in the notes actually that the family got from FOIA requests to the university, we see in these notes that he said, I was asking her questions that were normal of an STD screening. And so he denied that categorically. He did follow the patient on Instagram after the fact, but he had told the dean that she had asked him to do so. And then once he realized, hey, that might actually be a step too far, he unfollowed her. So the family's, the family's position on this is that above everything, taking the allegations aside, because they've actually never been proven to be true or not true at this point, though we do know he did follow her on Instagram.
Right.
The way that the school handled it, according to the family, was to presume he was guilty before moving forward. And you mentioned that email, obviously saying, be accountable when you go in front of the school's disciplinary body to present your case. They're basically saying to him, per the family, like, be accountable for the thing that you did. And the family says, but you never proved that he did it. And this actually follows a very unfortunate pattern that I've seen covering university due process disciplinary systems for years now. And I covered another tragic case at Stanford University, the case of Katie Meyer, who was a student who was accused of spilling coffee on another student. And she was investigated for months by her university, was told that she might not graduate from Stanford. She might not be able to go to Stanford Law School after graduation. And she was also sent an email from the university telling her of these potential consequences after the school's mental health counseling services were closed. So unfortunately, that night, she also took her own life. And
That's
so these cases,
crazy. I did not know that one. Yeah.
They follow very similar patterns, and it all kind of roots back to this idea that schools are presuming students guilty before giving them a meaningful chance to respond.
So in this situation with Dougal, the patient that he was treating and that felt, she was also a nurse. Did they know each other outside of the doctor-patient relationship, or do we not know that?
We don't know. So there are a lot of questions surrounding the actual interaction itself. And we don't know who this woman is. We don't know the nature of their relationship. We do know that she had some sort of medical background, which his parents used to say, like, listen, they could have been colleagues in a way, and that's why he followed her until he realized, oh, but she was still a patient. So it's quite messy. And the American Medical Association's guidance, too, on how to deal with these types of things regarding patients, social media, it's also not super clear-cut. So it is a very, very messy situation when it comes to what that boundary is. And it's clear that the student, he may have crossed the boundary, but should the school have dealt with it in this way? That's the ultimate question.
And you even said, like, at Texas Tech alone, I don't know how this would apply with other universities, but this is not the first, type of lawsuit along these lines that they've faced, right?
Yes. They face other lawsuits both from medical students and from residents alleging due process in the school's disciplinary process. And I spoke to at least 5 different students actually from Texas Tech Medical School who detailed very similar experiences of going in front of the school's disciplinary body and basically saying that they felt like they never had a chance to actually advocate for themselves. And I'll add one aspect of this story that I think is, if you want to see a positive in this story, it is what the Dougal family is fighting for now in light of what's happened to their son, and also Katie Meyer, also these other students at Texas Tech. They are fighting to actually implement a law in Texas, which is now in place in California, thanks to Katie Meyer's parents, that would require students who are public universities, if they're facing the school's disciplinary body, to actually have an advocate with them present so they don't feel alone. Mm-hmm. And I actually think that that's a really powerful, it could be an extremely powerful law if it were to go through in Texas. And there's actually a proposal for that to be in federal legislation as well. And it could change the way that all schools, public schools in the country, deal with disciplinary issues.
There was a quote in here from one woman in your story, Frannie, where and she's described Sherry Oldfield. She's a midwife and worked with Dougal during his rotation. And she's making the case, like during the OBGYN rotations, that these medical students should not be alone with patients. That's interesting to me, and there might be something to that, right?
Yes. So I will admit I am not a medical student. I've never been to medical school. So I don't know what that looks like for each different medical school, how they decide how patients are supposed to interact with medical students. But that was one of her critiques of the clinic, is she felt like the clinic was essentially putting these patients in a bad position by essentially leaving them alone with patients who are in a vulnerable state, and in the case of these students, them being young enough to not necessarily have all of the tools at their disposal to handle all the situations properly or be able to defend themselves, like in Bob's case when there's an allegation against him. There was nobody else in that room to know what actually happened.
Frannie Block, The Free Press. You can find the story at thefp.com. Really interesting reporting. I'm a big fan. So thank you so much for coming on here this afternoon.
Thanks so much.
All right, take care. It's just a sad, look, I'll admit, like, you can certainly make a case for your doctor following you on Instagram as being pretty creepy, and I don't know what else was said. The problem with a case like this, as she indicated in her reporting, no one else saw what happened.
Well, exactly.
Right. So I think he felt like, I think it's pretty clear he did something inappropriate. Did he do something as inappropriate to cost him his entire medical career? And he felt that way. And I don't know, you don't know what else he's going through, but it's I don't know if this is necessarily unique to the medical institutions, by the way. I think a lot of this stuff
Agreed.
has gotten very, very, tricky with the lawyers across different professions.
On the roads, we've got some volume out there, and it's nothing too terrible on westbound 70, but there was a vehicle fire just past 370, and they've had the right lane blocked, and that has created some slow-moving traffic. Now, there was also an accident, and this created a major jam. And this is southbound 141, the accident near Vance Road and a jam behind it. Southbound 270, slow, approaching Ladue Road. That, of course, due to road work. And then it's slowing again. Manchester down through Doherty Ferry. Now, northbound 55 is in good shape. We've got some volume. If you are headed into Illinois, it's just coming off of the Poplar Street Bridge on eastbound 55-64, headed towards 70. Eastbound 64 jams at 255. Eastbound 70 jams right at the 64 split. This report is brought to you by Overhead Door Company of St. Louis. Call them for their 26-point tune-up. One price for up to 3 garage doors and openers. Always look for the genuine, the original red ribbon of Overhead Door Company of St. Louis. Schedule online at overheaddoorstlewis.com. I'm Sue Thomas. That's Traffic 97.1 FM Talk, St. Louis Conservative.
So I don't know if you know who Ezra Klein is, New York Times columnist, relatively popular as a pundit. He said something on Twitter about the top 2 questions that people ask him as a reporter. And my mind was blown when you see, because I don't think anyone else who is in normal life would ever be asked these questions.
Oh, my gosh.
It'll come up next. I'll talk about it. Okay, this is random, but I saw this on the X, formerly Twitter, and it piqued my interest because I just felt like it was so weird. All right, so this is Ezra Klein, who is an opinion columnist and a pundit at the New York Times, and this is what he says. All right, and there was Robbie Suave. I like that name. He's over at. I've had Robbie on the show before. He is a big libertarian. At oh my gosh, I can't remember the site now. I'll remember in a second. But anyway, he tweeted this out, and he said, "I have never once in my life." Reason magazine. There you go. Came Robbie Suave. Reason magazine, very good libertarian publication. I've never once in my life encountered someone expressing this sentiment. Either I live in a quiet bubble, or Ezra Klein does. So here it is. Ready? This is weird to me. Over the past few years, this is what Ezra says. Okay, I've been asked one question more than any other. It comes at speeches, at dinners, in conversations. It's the most popular query when I open my podcast to suggestions time and again. It comes in two forms. You ready? The first, should I have kids given the climate crisis they will face?
Seriously?
The second, I can't even really. The second, should I have kids knowing they will contribute to the climate crisis the world faces? So I think
my gosh.
Robbie's question about whether he lives in a bubble or Ezra Klein does, that was rhetorical, okay? Because Ezra Klein lives in his bubble. I don't even know one person. And by the way, I know a lot of whacked out lefty liberals out there. I don't know one person in my world, and I'm telling you, I got some pretty liberal people out there that would ask that question. What kind of people are in his little bubble to say, should I have kids because of climate change and what they're going to face? First of all, hate to tell you guys, all that stuff about the world ending, that's been blowed up pretty good. Okay, so we're fine. We're going to adapt. I had this story yesterday, Sue, and it was really interesting. It was great reporting, and I believe it was in the Washington Post. And it was about how in 2014, from this period from 2014 to 2018, and some of this I'm going to, kind of try to remember because it was up and down the Pacific Ocean coast from Seattle on down. We call them starfish, but we're not supposed to call them starfish.
Oh, what are they?
Well, because they were like, what did they call them?
Well,
It's
they're
something
starfish.
But they are starfish, but the guy who was doing the research on them was very particular in what he called them. But anyway, the point is, and I'll pull this up in a second here, they all disappeared because of this virus. And we're talking like billions of these starfish that died. But guess what? They're now more than ever before. They have more than ever before, and they don't get it because the experts are like, well, look, the warm weather and climate change is taking these out, right? That was what the whole narrative was. Like, you can even Google this right now, and I did this yesterday, and I said, wait a second, okay, what were they saying when all of this was going on at the time and they were describing climate change? So the Washington Post headline, I just found it, sea stars is what they call it.
Sea
because they're not starfish, they say sea stars. A record die-off of sea stars was followed by something that stunned biologists. So they're almost extinct along the West Coast. All the experts come out and, they're talking about climate change and how we're causing this. And now they're all back, and they're back in bigger numbers than ever. And I went over some of this yesterday. I guess what he did is, this Mengi guy who has studied this for a long time, he's like the definitive, expert on this, Bruce Mengi. He's 82 years old right now. 6 months ago, he starts doing research, and he says that five-legged sea stars were undergoing a significant baby boom. The tide pools were denser than they had seen before, and something rare and wonderful was happening on the Oregon coast. One of the zones where the predators had returned from the brink the most was in this particular area. And they kind of go into what happened with, them disappearing, and there was this name for this virus that went through. And there's no doubt that, it could happen again. They're worried about El Nino this year and warm weathers. But it is interesting that everybody made this decision, and, you do it all the time. And you hear about these animals that are going extinct, and then lo and behold, what happens? Nature kind of takes care of itself here.
Yes.
Just a little bit. There's little control. Let's say you're a person who really believes that we are driving climate change with our, CO2 emissions. We have to reduce our implants and all this other stuff. Well, A lot of this stuff has not come true. I just wonder when there's a time when Al Gore, and we just went over the 20th anniversary of his ridiculous, documentary a couple of weeks ago. Will they ever come out and just kind of be honest about the fact that they got so many of these things wrong? Like, it's not just a couple of things they got wrong, right? Because climate change is the default excuse for anything. If you have a bad hurricane season, it's climate change. And then if you have a super quiet one like last year, and by the way, 2 years ago, the predictions at this time of year, I should do this because this is the time of year when they do the predictions in the LA Times and elsewhere. Hurricane season is starting. It's going to be blah, blah, blah. So 2 years ago, it was supposed to be one of the most active hurricane seasons in a long time. Didn't happen. Now, we did have one, I can't remember which one it was. We had one really bad hurricane that made landfall
Yes, we did.
that year. But the overall number of hurricanes, which are supposedly on the rise because of climate change, same thing with severity, same thing with tornadoes, and that's a lie too. It's just not happening, right? So all the prediction models, they get it wrong so often. We're going to have hurricanes. We're going to have some bad hurricanes. Maybe these sea stars go away. Maybe they come back again, but life will go on.
Well, we've got a stall reported. Now, this is southbound 270 at Ladue Road, and it looks like they've got the right lane blocked because of it. So just take care through there. It is causing a little bit of a delay back through at least Page. Now, 70 eastbound, in pretty good shape, but it's slowing at Jennings Station Road. Westbound is slow in the same area, and then at Cave Springs, and again, just as you approach Highway K. Now, 64 is heavier, but that's the usual volume, too. It's approaching Hampton, out through McCausland. Then you get a break, and it slows near Lake St. Louis Boulevard. Southbound 141 is jammed. There was an accident at Vance that really jammed things up there. And eastbound 40, a little slow, headed for the Poplar Street Bridge. Most of the volume is because of road work. Eastbound 55-64 at 70. So that has caused a delay. 64 eastbound jams at 255. And Route 3 has got some slow-moving trains, especially at Queenie, that's causing a delay there. This report brought to you by Point with an E Pest Control. I'm Sue Thomas with traffic on 97.1 FM Talk, St. Louis Conservative.
All right, we'll have Sue's News on the other side of Fox News right around 4:18 this afternoon. After that, my former colleague and friend Rob Hart up at WBBM Radio in Chicago. I want to find out what the real story is about the Bears and whether they are moving to Indiana and what the reaction is up there. Jacob Olidort at 5:04. He's the Chief Research Officer and Director of the American Security at the America First Policy Institute. And with the Iranian shoot-down of an American Apache in the Strait, what will that mean for this particular conflict? And it's Tech Talk Tuesdays. George Rosenthal, right around 5:30.
This is a Fox News alert. Tears in a Texas courtroom. I'm Lisa Brady. As a Collin County jury finds 19-year-old Carmelo Anthony guilty of murder in the stabbing death of 17-year-old Austin Metcalf during a confrontation last year at a high school track meet.
When that guilty verdict was read, I'm told that Carmelo Anthony was crying. He was shaking. His defense attorney kept his arm around his shoulders the entire time. And also I'm told that Austin Metcalf's twin brother, Hunter, this was the first time he was inside the courtroom when that guilty verdict was read. I'm told it was really emotional from both sides after that murder verdict.
Fox's Brooke Taylor at the courthouse in McKinney, Texas, where the verdict was reached after only about 3 hours of deliberations. The judge did tell the jury they could consider a lesser manslaughter count. They're now on to the sentencing phase, with Carmelo Anthony's mother appealing to the jury to have mercy on her son. He could face life in prison. President Trump says a U.S. Army helicopter downed into the Strait of Hormuz last night was shot down by Iran and that the U.S. must respond. No word yet on how. Iran state media, citing a military source, as warning against using the crash as a pretext to return to fighting. CENTCOM says an Iranian drone shot down that helicopter.
U.S. officials tell me they are not certain that Iranians meant to target the American helicopter, but they saw Iran launch several drones at that time to target activity in the Strait of Hormuz, and the Apache flies very low over those waters. The two airmen were rescued by an autonomous surface vessel, or sea drone, after crashing into the water.
Fox's Jennifer Griffin. That drone rescue described as an operational first. The two crew members are in stable condition. America is listening to Fox News.
So Ryan and I came to the decision to get life insurance when I was pregnant with our first son. He really wanted us to be taken care of if something happened to him. He provided for our family in life and also after his death. I think that would make him proud. Ethos makes it fast and easy to get life insurance. Apply in minutes and get same-day coverage.
Get your free quote at ethos.com/save. That's ethos.com/save. Paid testimonial. Time spent on application may vary. Online health questions required.
Finding great candidates to hire can be like, well, trying to find a needle in a haystack, but not with ZipRecruiter. Its powerful technology actively finds and invites qualified candidates to apply to your job. So while other companies might deliver a lot of hay, ZipRecruiter finds you the needle in the haystack.
See why 4 out of 5 employers who post a job on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. Try ZipRecruiter for free at ZipRecruiter.com/free. That's ZipRecruiter.com/free.
ZipRecruiter.
Oh, yeah, it's a Tuesday afternoon. We got Sue Thomas back for Sue's News here in a couple of minutes. We'll have Rob Hart from WBBM in Chicago kind of explaining the Bears' decision. Is it final to move to Indiana? He's going to explain that because I'm still lost on that one. I really don't get it. I mean, I'm not a Bears fan. I'm a Packers fan, so I guess I don't really care, but it seems very odd the way they're going through all this. Did you see, and I don't even think I put this one on the X, formerly Twitter, but I did. We have a Mark Reardon show text string that goes on. It's the same one where I missed when Sue on Sunday night said she wouldn't be in yesterday, and I missed that little note. But did you see the video that I sent today of the Ring camera where there's a mom and 3 kids, and they're running because their family dog has dragged a live armadillo into their house?
Okay, I got the link, and then I got busy and haven't watched it. Okay, go on.
You got to click it. It's pretty funny. I think it's like a golden retriever, and the family is just completely panicked, and the dog has the armadillo in his mouth and runs into the house. Now, we don't get to see what happened after that because it's just from the Ring camera, but it's actually pretty funny. It's the kind of thing that I could see almost happening at my house to a certain degree, only because I don't think the cats would grab an armadillo. Yeah. See what I mean? She watched the video. It's crazy.
Oh, my gosh.
I'll blast that. Will you put that on Twitter and I'll retweet it? Can you do that for me or not? 'Cause I'm gonna be
let me try that.
talking about some
I'm
other
not
stuff
sure.
here.
I'll
well,
try.
just remind me during the
Okay.
break, and I'll put it on there
All
because I do think people we need moments like that because, and I hope everyone was okay. I really do. You know, it's weird. I have not. You know that in the armadillo invasion in my neighborhood a couple summers ago when it got so dry. And what's weird about that is I barely even see them dead anymore on the roads. Like I used to see quite
Really?
a few. I would see a lot, and
I
I don't
don't
see
either.
as many anymore.
No.
Yeah.
That's weird.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if it's because the automobile, which is their main predator.
Yeah, well, that's true.
I don't know because honestly, I would see in my area where I am in Fenton High Ridge, I'd see quite a few that were on their backs because you know what their instinct is to jump up. So they don't get
weird.
run over by the car. The car kind of hits them flush.
Oh, that's
Which is not
awful.
good. So have you ever been to like on vacation to I'll talk about it in terms of Door County, Wisconsin, which I always speak fondly of. A lot of St. Louisans go up there. But have you had a rental at all where you're on the beach, Lake Michigan or anything like that before, right?
On Lake Michigan, it's been a long time. But yeah.
So when I'm making noise with the microphone, I don't like that. I apologize. When we go up to Door County, we've always stayed on what's called the quiet side, which is where Lake Michigan is. And there's an area up there. There's an area known as Whitefish Bay, which I stay. There's also a Whitefish Bay in Milwaukee, which is a suburb. I've actually lived in that. And that's not what I'm talking about. But one time, we always prefer to have a beachfront property, right? And some of them are sand beachfront. Sometimes it's a rocky beachfront. And that's not preferred, but we'll have friends that are also there and we'll, do a sandy beach.
Well, yeah.
Right. So, but one year, and I'm going to lead you into this story here, okay? So one year we rented a property and we always have an area that we want to be close to, and it was not beachfront, but it had beachfront access. You walk across the street, it's access. So I think it was like even on the first day that we're there, we're trying to get the lay of the land, and we go to the beachfront access, and there's just 4 or 5 of us, a couple other couples had come with, and we're standing on the beach, and I think maybe the dogs were with me on this trip, okay? And this would have been a while ago. This would have been one of my labs and then Olaf, if I had to guess. Well, the people that lived in the property that was in front of the beach came out and they shoot us off. They're like, you're not supposed to be here. This is our property. And there's literally nobody else on the beach. Like nobody. You can't even see anyone on the beach. But they wanted to kick us out of there. We're like, okay, well, we didn't know. And apparently there's this little sliver that we have access to that we're really told. And the people that came out, they weren't too nice about it. By the way, they were from St. Louis. A lot of St. Louisans go up there. But I knew that they were from St. Louis. And I never found out their names. But it was like a rude type of deal. But we maybe didn't know the rules. So listen to this. This is a story that comes from Shorewood, Wisconsin. I live there as well. It's a north suburb right north of Milwaukee on Lake Michigan. It's beautiful. Whitefish Bay and Shorewood is where my wife grew up, right there along the lake. So there's a trial that took place between a guy by the name of Paul Florsheim, and yes, his great-grandfather is the founder of the shoe company, and another dude that lives in Shorewood, Daniel Damalaga, who, lives and has this place on Lake Michigan, right? So Florsheim walks his dogs past this guy's property all the time. And this is weird because you don't see houses like this in Shorewood, Wisconsin, but it's kind of like a tiki-style boathouse. There's a deck that doubles as what they refer to in this story in the Wall Street Journal as a surveillance post. From there, this guy, Damagala, monitors traffic, and he sets off alarms when walkers and swimmers and kayakers cross in front of his property, right? So he has signs that say private property beyond this sign, only water access beyond this point, all in caps. So this guy has a reputation. He calls the cops. They sometimes issue a trespassing citation for this. And Florsheim, he doesn't like it. He doesn't pay the fines. He walks away, and then he takes this to court. So there's a state law in Wisconsin that says that people can wade, swim, or boat in state-protected waters, but things get trickier out of the water. So he was ticketed for walking on dry sand, just barely. He argues it's absurd to say that he could wade past but not put a foot higher up on the shore. And when you think about it,
it is
kind
absurd.
of is absurd, right?
Yes.
So he goes to trial in Shorewood. And by the way, if you want, Madison, Wisconsin is kind of like Moscow, okay? Whitefish Bay and Shorewood are like Leningrad. Let's just say that. All right, you're talking about some of the most liberal lefty wackos probably that live in the Milwaukee area would live in those suburbs. And they call it White Folks Bay, by the way, Whitefish Bay, which is not too far from the truth. So they go to trial, and he loses in that. But the judge in the case says she's obligated to rule for the other dude because it was a prior case involving Lake Winnebago, which is another lake in Wisconsin. And that was from 1923. And the Supreme Court ruled that a landowner who wanted to water his cattle had priority over the use of the shore, not pedestrians wanting to cross the beach when the water level was low. So the judge said that the ruling seemed to apply into this case, but indicated a decision favoring the landowner over the public was out of touch with the practices in other states. So in other words, the law says I got to rule this way, but I think it's kind of weird that the law says I got to rule this way. And she even says maybe that case should be overruled. So he's taking this to the Supreme Court of Wisconsin. At least that's what he hopes. He's a 66-year-old retiree from UWM, which is the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. He's been walking on that beach for 50 years since his family grew up in the 1960s. He's got 2 dogs, Leo, a German Shepherd he calls a bit of a handful, and Rosie, who is a 6-year-old Border Collie mix. And he says, look, they need a lot of walking, and I do too. He admits, he says, I'm not out there. I wasn't trying to create a legal test. He's though, this is where I have some relatability with him. He says, I'm not the kind of person to just pay the fine quietly. My personality is such that if I'm confronted with it, I don't back away from that. So
sounds familiar, Fred.
It sounds
Sure does.
really familiar, doesn't it? So even though he lost, some of the details are interesting because the village of Shorewood calls the dude that is complaining as a witness, and he testifies that he's complained about passerbys some 50 times. That's similar along, the same guy. Shorewood police say they've responded to his calls for years. He sets off alarms. He tries to scare people from lounging on his property, which, by the way, that's kind of understandable, right? He says they sit around like they own the place. So it's one of those situations where I think you have people that abuse the privilege of being on the beach, and they don't, respect other people's properties. And then you have this guy who's just simply trying to walk his dog down a stretch of Lake Michigan that's very beautiful, by the way, but can't do it because this guy says that it's trespassing. And Damalaga says he never gave Florsheim permission to walk on his property. At one point, so this is crazy, he likens, and this is in the trial, he likens what the Florsheim dude is doing to a home invasion. He goes, imagine somebody is in your house saying, this is not your house. Yeah. So most of the people up there, by the way, they favor the Florsheim guy. But this is now one of those cases.
Florsheim the homeowner or the walker?
No, he's the walker.
Okay.
He's the walker, right? So a lot of the people up there even say, we didn't even know we were doing something wrong. But these guys obviously have gotten into it over the last couple of years. But he thinks it might be a test case, and it will be kind of interesting. I can understand to a certain extent a beachfront homeowner's perspective. If you got, let's say you got a bunch of kids that are out there and they're just doing their thing right in front of your property. In my situation, they could have been a little nicer about it. That's all. It could have been like, hey, look, but they weren't. They were like, get the hell off our property. And we're like, what? This is the beach.
And you're saying to me that if this guy would have walked his dogs through the water,
he would have been okay.
He would have been okay.
Exactly.
Wow.
That's how weird it is, right? And that's why I think that's what nags at him. That would nag at me.
Yes.
Saying this doesn't. But it is Wisconsin, ladies and gentlemen. And I would expect that, whatever ruling comes from the Wisconsin Supreme Court, I don't know, what would be the liberal ruling there? But it'll be a liberal ruling.
On the roads, we've got a couple of things, but the good news is they cleared that accident, southbound 141 at Vance, and we're left with just the usual volume on westbound 6440. It's approaching Kings Highway out through McCausland, but then it slows again at 270 and in pockets from Highway N out through 70. 370 westbound slows at the river, that due to road work. 70 westbound, moderate volume Jennings Station Road, 141 Highway K, and out at the 70 split. Now, the Illinois side just has road work everywhere, and eastbound 5564 jams approaching the 70 split. Eastbound 70 is slow at 64. Eastbound 64 is slow, approaching 255 through 157, and plenty of volume on Route 3. There was a slow-moving train right there at Queenie Avenue, causing delays. I'm Sue Thomas, and that's traffic. 97.1 FM Talk, St. Louis Conservative.
That's so confusing to me when you say Queenie Avenue, because we're so used to Queenie Park. I had no idea there was a Queenie Avenue over there, but that's in Illinois. Not to be confused with Queenie Park, right? So we'll have Sue's News coming up just around the corner, and then we head up to Chicago to find the latest out about the Chicago Bears and whether or not they're really going to move to Indiana. Rob Hart, who is an anchor reporter at WBBM Radio, Odyssey sister station in Chicago. So for 33 years now, we celebrated a great anniversary for Banner Construction in 2023. But for 33 years now, you've had homeowners that have really depended on Banner for their creative work on exterior home restoration. And Banner believes the single most important decision that you can make as a homeowner is who do you hire, right? Everybody wants a good price, but this is your home. It's your biggest investment. Be careful when people cut corners. This is a true story. I was out with Bill Kaufman and Sam P. out to lunch a couple years ago, and they were talking about somebody, and it was a former St. Louis Cardinals player, I will not mention the name, had a Banner project, went bad, real bad. They called Banner. It wasn't Banner's project. They called them to turn it around and to fix it. And that's because they're a preferred James Hardy and a Pella window specialist. So they'd love to show you affordable design options. Maybe you thought you never had them. Banner knows how much you love your home. Their goal, make you fall in love with your home all over again. They do it time after time here in St. Louis. 314-569-1050. The website, bannerconstruction.com. All right, we have Tuesday Sue's News coming up. Then we're going to go up to Chicago, find out the latest on the Bears moving Jacob Olidort, the latest on Iran. Sounded like President Trump might be ready to retaliate for an Apache helicopter being shot down. And then, of course, it's Tech Talk Tuesdays. George Rosenthal coming up in just a little bit more than an hour on 97.1 FM Talk.
These allegations are deeply concerning.
Does the president have any comment?
We're not going to comment.
It's not clear messaging. No.
And now, Sue's News. Brought to you by Sue.
Good news, my neighbor Carolyn was able to go over. Fred, I forgot to move my sourdough dough out of the proofing area into the fridge, and it could have been a disaster. You understand?
Does she have a key?
She knows the garage code.
Oh, good deal.
So I sent her in, and we have spared a loaf of bread.
What did the dogs think?
They love her. So it's all good. But I really panicked about that. Man, you spent a lot of time with that. Anyway.
But do you think you salvaged it?
I think so.
Okay.
We're a little late. It could be still overproof.
Keep us posted.
Yeah, okay. On this day in history, 53 years ago today, I love it so much, but I had to cut this down because, the track is, a mile and a half at Belmont. But it was on this day in history in 73 when Secretariat won the Belmont Stakes to become the first Triple Crown winner in 25 years. And he didn't just win it, he just destroyed everybody.
Okay, so I have a piece of audio here that is 3 minutes and 17 seconds. Am I supposed to play that?
Well,
let's see what it sounds like. Let's just check it out here.
Continue down the backstretch, and that Secretariat now taking the lead. He's got it by about a length and a half. Still Sham, 10 lengths back. My Gallant, Twice the Prince. They're moving on the turn now. For the turn at Secretariat. It looks like he's...
Okay, well, this will be the finish.
No, keep going.
Yeah, this will be the finish here.
At 3.5. He's moving into the turn. Secretariat holding on to a large lead. Sham is second, and then it's a long way back to My Gallant and Twice the Prince. They're on the turn. Secretariat is blazing along. The first 3/4 of a mile in 1:09 4/5. Secretariat is widening now. He is moving like a tremendous machine. Secretariat by 12.
12.
Secretariat by 14 lengths on the turn. Sham is dropping back. It looks like they'll catch him today as My Gallant and Twice the Prince are both coming up to him now. But Secretariat is all alone. He's out there almost a 16th of a mile away from the rest of the horses. Secretariat is in a position that is impossible to catch. He's into the stretch. Secretariat leads his field by 18 lengths.
18.
Twice the Prince is taken second, and My Gallant has moved down to third. They're in the stretch. Secretariat has opened a 22-length lead.
It's nuts.
He's going to be the Triple Crown winner. Here comes Secretariat to the wire. An unbelievable, an amazing performance. He hits the finish 25 lengths in front.
So I have
Unbelievable.
a black and white photograph, and I can't remember where I got it, but I framed it. It is in the basement of my home, right outside my bar area. And one of the funniest things that I remember from COVID is someone posted. It's the legendary photo that shows how big of a lead he had. And someone said at the time that the original social distancer when COVID was going on.
That call is tremendous.
It is tremendous.
And Sue had a lot of it memorized.
Oh, yeah. This is one of my favorite sports histories.
Do you know who that was on the call?
No, it was TV. It was not the radio, so I don't know. But they have
Jim
it.
McKay.
I don't know.
You know,
I know what you
Here's
think.
what I will say, because I'm very familiar with horse racing, very familiar with horse racing calls, right? That announcer was challenged on how to call that race.
Yes.
Because you don't have horse races where the horse is in growing that lead by that much when there's not a competition. He's like, what do I talk about here?
Yes.
It's so that's very interesting. And it is talk about history. That was crazy.
Oh,
for
I
sure.
love it.
And we didn't really talk about this yesterday, but I'll be the first to admit that I did not give enough respect to Golden Tempo. And it's stupid because he was one of my Derby horses. I just thought that he wouldn't come back strong in the Belmont. But one of the things I think I aired on is that the theory there is Golden Temple's a closer and it's a shorter race. It was the same race as the Derby because they did it at Saratoga. But Sherry DeVoe did it again, and that was
awesome.
Unreal. Unbelievable that Golden Temple wins that.
So fun to watch. We have that same giant picture.
It's amazing.
It is amazing. And have you seen the movie?
Oh, yeah. It's really
good.
Remember how they have that real call in there? Anyway. By the way, 4 horses have done it since. Seattle Slew in 77, Affirmed in 78, American Pharaoh in 2015, and Justify in 2018.
You got to remember, before 2015, there were a lot of people, including me, saying we'll never, ever have a Triple Crown winner again. And we got pretty much back-to-back. That was interesting.
None of them have touched the Belmont and Secretariat in the times.
No.
Oh, so cool. Today is National Strawberry Rhubarb Pie Day, Fred. Yes,
I'm down with that.
I'm not a big rhubarb.
See, Fred doesn't like it, but if it is good, but you have to do some stuff to it. Have you had the strawberry rhubarb, or are you afraid of it?
I'd try it. Sure.
Okay, all right.
So
maybe
look, I'm
I'll
going
make it
to
one.
be honest, and I haven't had rhubarb in a long time, but when I was a kid, I remember my grandma and my aunts, maybe my mom, but I liked it.
Yeah.
But see, now that was a while ago. I don't really remember the last time I had it.
Oh, that's good. My mom got this recipe from our neighbor one time who was a home ec teacher, and it's... Woo.
So what I remember, though, is like I had an aunt and uncle in particular that had a relatively large backyard. It wasn't that big or anything, but they had a garden, and they grew the rhubarb. And I think my grandma and grandpa grew the rhubarb, too.
Oh, that's awesome.
I love the word rhubarb.
I don't know if I like it, now that I've said it like 5 times in a row. I'm not sure it's my favorite.
It's also, this really applies to all of us, National Forklift Safety Day.
There you go.
Yes. And National Earl Day. If you know some Earls, anybody with the name Earl, you're supposed to respect them
We
today.
have a very, very dedicated listener who goes by Uncle Earl. He may be listening.
Yes.
He tweets at us a lot, so there he is.
Yes, there you go, Uncle Earl. All right, and I'm sure we're going to, we do talk to George Rosenthal today because I had a nightmare occur
Fred,
over the
heard about this?
weekend.
No.
Oh, my God.
It's just complete insanity. Somehow somebody got and started taking out a payday loan in my name. So,
wow.
it freaked me completely out, and we will talk about that coming up and what you do. But also, Apple did present the new AI-powered Siri yesterday,
Yes.
and the Siri revamp has been in the works for a couple of years. In fact, Apple was sued in that class action lawsuit for essentially false advertising and claiming AI capabilities before they had them in place. And so I guess the Apple people or customers got mad and said, what? It doesn't exist yet, and so Apple had to pay $250 million to settle.
Hey, just quickly, a little breaking news. CENTCOM is announcing that forces began launching self-defense strikes against Iran at 4 p.m. this afternoon at the commander-in-chief's discretion. That was in response to the Apache helicopter that was brought down. So we will have more details on that coming up.
Oh, wow. Ridley Scott is making a new version of Treasure Island, and Hugh Jackman is playing Long John Silver. Just a few little tidbits here. And Netflix has unveiled the real-life dog that will star in the double-action series Scooby-Doo Origins.
It's been controversial.
Why?
Well, okay, here's the deal. Best I can gather, the picture that got out there of Scooby-Doo, people think it looks like a chocolate lab. But what I'm told is that Great Danes can look like that when they're a puppy.
They can.
People freaked out because they thought they were casting the wrong dog.
No.
Upon further review, I think it's fine, but the puppy didn't look like a Great Dane.
P.S. That puppy is adorable.
It is.
It's totally worth a Google.
Yes, it
yes.
is. So I didn't talk about this yesterday, but I did see the reaction, but now I'm glad I didn't because I would have been... See, the gut check was, okay, what are they doing? But then, you got to find out the rest of the story.
You do. A posthumous Prince album called Timeless comes out on the 28th of August. We've talked about it. They've released a single, and it's called Stone, and it was just released yesterday. This was recorded in 95.
We talked about this a little bit. I'm very interested in it. And that's out right now on the streaming services? Okay, good. I'm going to
Why
put
do you
that on
think
the
it
playlist.
took so long?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe he rejected it for an album, but had it finished. I don't know. Thoughts?
Well,
I don't know.
A
It
lot of
sounds really
artists,
good.
a lot of artists like this have deep vaults where there are maybe hundreds, if not more than that, recordings. I mean, Springsteen is a good example of that. And then what they do, later in life is they release some of the different versions. Well, Prince passed away, and I'm sure that there have been lawsuits and stuff like that have to do with releases of the. But it wouldn't surprise me that an artist like that has a lot of stuff that was never ever released. I'd like to hear his version of Manic Monday. I'm guessing there is one
I
of
would
those
too.
at some point. I don't know that we ever heard that, did we? He wrote that for Susanna Hoffs.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
I think we're almost out of time, by the way.
And finally, at Sue's News, today's random fact. Brooks Brothers invented the button-down shirt collar in 1900 after noticing how polo players would pin their collars down so they wouldn't flap around.
Look at that. There you go. Random fact for today.
I'm Dale Loney with Your Money Now. It appears that many university endowments are going to rely on the success of the upcoming SpaceX IPO to bump up their value. The Wall Street Journal reports that many schools' investments are in the low single digits for the IPO. The University of North Carolina has a 10% of its endowment in the Elon Musk company. Meanwhile, Washington University in St. Louis has a mid-teens percentage. The latest data from the Social Security Administration says that the trust fund that it relies upon for making payments payments will run out in 2032. At that point, only 78% of benefits will be payable. The annual trustees report shows that the depletion would be 1 year earlier than prior projections. Wall Street saw mixed results today, with chip stocks still weighing on investors. Dow Industrials picked up 86 points, ending the day at 50,872. Nasdaq lost 250 points. S&P 500 fell 19. That's your money now.
I know that hiring can be challenging. You sort through tons of resumes and you get too many so-so applicants. You're just waiting for someone to match your role perfectly. Well, now there's a place where you can meet them fast. ZipRecruiter.
Need to hire right away. Start your search for strong candidates. The right fit awaits. Build your team. Build it sooner. Meet your match on ZipRecruiter.
Just head to ZipRecruiter.com/free right now to try it for free. And you're on your way to meeting your match. 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. So try it now. Go to ZipRecruiter.com/free. Once again, that's ZipRecruiter.com/free.
Meet your match on ZipRecruiter. Try it free.
.432, this portion of the show is sponsored by Jerry Kelly, Heating, Air Conditioning, Electrical, and Plumbing. All right, so I grew up in the north suburban Chicago suburbs, Niles, Morton Grove, Park Ridge. Was not a Bears fan when I was a kid. Actually, I was a Chiefs fan for a while when I was a kid, and then that became a natural for me when the Cardinals left St. Louis. But, following the stadium thing in Chicago, I just don't get why, they bought this big piece of property the Bears did out in Arlington Heights where Arlington Park used to be. They tore it down, historic race park. So many of my dollars went flying out of my pocket there, Sue, over the years. But the prevailing wisdom was the Bears bought that property because they wanted to move it out to the suburbs. And then this Indiana thing got going, right? And apparently that's where they're going. Here's Mike Braun, the governor of Indiana.
Made it so easy from the get-go. For 37 years, I signed the front side of a paycheck, had been involved in a lot of real estate deals. And when we met, they could tell they were dealing with somebody that knew what he was doing. And there was a lot of due diligence to check off, and they weren't certain what they were going to do. I just wanted to make sure it was an honest, brokered conversation. And when I could tell that, we got that bill done, and they made the public statement back, I think, in February. I knew then that we were dealing with the clock being an issue, but the Illinois legislature was in session basically from the beginning of the year until the end of May, and the fact that they were taking it up to the deadline looked favorable. And I think that is probably what most observers ought to look at. We did it at the speed of business. They dawdled for nearly 5 years.
Yeah, good for Indiana, I guess, is what Mike Braun's saying. My former colleague and friend Rob Hart, anchor reporter WBBM in Chicago, Odyssey sister station, with us this afternoon. Rob, how are you?
I'm doing very well. Great to be talking to you and to everyone in St. Louis.
I texted you on Friday. I said, I need 5 minutes, and then you gave me a window to call you on Saturday, and I did not do that. I failed, so we're going to do that here. My question on Friday was, I don't understand this whole Bears thing. I really am so confused about it, just in the whole sense of the geography. Now, Sue and I were talking about this during the break. It is true that you have the New York teams that play in New Jersey, right? And, so there's a precedent. Now the the Chiefs are going to play in Kansas, not in Missouri, but that is Kansas City, Missouri. But first of all, is this a done deal? And Rob, I feel like I'm missing something here. I really do.
Well, do you have like 3 hours
Yes.
for me to explain to you the entire
Let's
stadium
do it.
saga?
Let's
Because
do it.
There are so many ins and outs and what have yous and interested parties. Yes, the Bears are looking at Indiana, Hammond, in northwest Indiana, just over the border from Chicago, as their area of focus for a new stadium. However, for the past 5 years, they've been focused on Arlington Heights, which is a northwest suburb of Chicago, as an area of focus of their new stadium. So, yes, the Bears are looking at Indiana, but this is not a done deal by any stretch of the imagination. And in fact, we've been here before. The Bears actually talked about building a stadium and entertainment complex in Gary 30 years ago called Planet Park. And that didn't happen. The end result was plopping a spaceship on top of Soldier Field.
I don't remember. Yeah, that was what they did, though. Yes, exactly.
And of course, the state of Illinois, or taxpayers, still owe $500 million for that spaceship. And that was why the lawmakers in Illinois were a little more hesitant this time around to just give away the store.
So I think the perception is, and this is one of the reasons I wanted to have you on, I think a lot of people feel like this is a done deal. And maybe it was because of the way that Mike Braun was talking about it. So it's encouraging to me. And look, you know me, I'm a Packers guy. I don't really care about the Bears. But you have a lot of the fan base that's in the north suburbs, the northwest suburbs. Like, Rob, I mapped it on Friday afternoon. Now, mind you, Chicago traffic is nuts. But if you were to leave from where my mom and dad and my sister lives in Arlington Heights and try to get to that stadium, it would have taken you on Friday 2.5 hours to get there. Now, I get that a lot of that is construction probably and traffic, but even mapping it from the current Soldier Field, I think it's like 20-something miles, isn't it?
It's probably closer to the current Soldier Field, the Hammond site, than Arlington Heights. But as you point out, traffic is a real issue, and that also applies to Saturday and Sunday afternoon. Speaking as someone who has spent many hours in Saturday and Sunday afternoon traffic, saying, I thought this, don't you people have homes? but
I know.
Apparently not. They want to go downtown and have a good time. But here are some of the stumbling blocks to the Bears potentially moving to northwest Indiana, because a number of local taxes have to come into place for Lake and Porter counties to get this thing off the ground. There's a 1% food and beverage tax that needs to be passed, a 5% innkeeper, doubling the hotel tax in Lake County, Indiana, and also renegotiating their lease with the Indiana Toll Road to provide $700 million in additional revenue. All of this needs to be done by June 30th of 2027. And as happy as they are in northwest Indiana to be in the spotlight, a lot of the lawmakers there are saying we need to see the financials. And of course, Governor Pritzker of Illinois just saying this afternoon that if the legislature in Illinois, the General Assembly, can come together on a Bears bill, he would be happy to call a special session before November.
Well, so that tells me this is far from over. Now, again, why would you buy? And I know that piece of property. I know you know that piece of property very well out there in Arlington Heights. It is a monster piece of property. It used to house Arlington Park and the stables and everything, and there's a lot of potential there. Look, I'd rather have them stay downtown because I think cities should have their teams there. But look, we've gotten away from that in many, many different areas. So the Arlington Heights thing, while it would alienate, certainly people from the South, it's still far away. There's a lot of public transportation that goes in there. It just makes sense that it would be in Illinois. So what I hear you saying is there's still a chance.
There's still a chance. And on top of that, you have to remember, if the Bears really wanted to go to Hammond, they would have gone by now, just because it is such a very good and favorable deal to the McCaskey family. The stadium would be built using public money. The Bears would lease it with an option to buy once all the bonds are paid off. But the Hallis family, they've had their eyes on Arlington Heights for 50 years.
Long time. Yeah, for a long time.
George Hallis wanted to build at Arlington Park in 1975, and something tells me that if the Bears actually signed the paper to go to Hammond, Virginia is going to pop out of her crypt in Des Plaines and address what the family is doing.
You're right though. They lived right there. I mean, that's not true. Des Plaines is right basically next to Arlington Heights. That's fascinating. Are you still in Park Ridge? Is that where you live?
I am still in Park Ridge, so I would love the idea of riding a bike to the train and then taking the train to Arlington Heights and seeing the Bears, as opposed to now, which is public transportation, and that's an hour if everything goes right. So I would be nice. It would be nice to have the Bears in my backyard, but also looking at the map of Northwest Indiana, this could potentially, if the Bears do move to Hammond, could be a very good deal for the southeast side of the city, which is a big part of Chicago that nobody talks about. And you would have the Bears on one end of Lake Michigan in Indiana, and then you would have this quantum computing campus that's going into the old U.S. Steel site on the other side. So that could be very good for the south side.
A lot of options. Yeah, look, I'm kind of focusing on the north side because I was from the northwest side and the north side. But you're right, there are people, and that's been a growing area that would be more advantaged to having that Indiana location. Well, the whole thing is interesting to me. A bunch of rich people trying to figure out how much tax dollars go to stadiums. But I'm glad you kind of gave us the lay of the land here this afternoon. How is it, WBBM, not unlike our station here in the building, KMOX, lost the resources of CBS Radio News. Rob and I used to work with my morning show partner at WTMJ, and Rob and I worked there, WTMJ Milwaukee. That's how we got to know each other. Sherry Preston was my co-anchor. She is the lead anchor on the ABC news coverage in the morning, and you got to be airing that. It's got to be weird working with Sherry again indirectly, right?
I think this goes to show you this is very important to all you little leaguers out there who are trying to break into this business or any business. You have to be nice to everybody. For example, if the morning news anchor, when you're an intern, tells you to go to his house to get his wallet, you say yes, because you never know when you're going to cross paths again, whether it's Mark Reardon or Sherry Preston.
That's a legendary story that I like to share, Rob and I, because he was an intern. But let me tell you about this guy, because and I hope we have people like this. And look, in this business, Rob, I don't think there's a lot of future for young people. But he was someone that was willing to put in the time as an intern and learn from people, and then bust his ass out there as a reporter. He goes to Chicago. You were WGN. I mean, you've been a survivor. You're younger than I am, but you're still in this business. And I'm proud of you after getting my wallet that one day in Bayside, Wisconsin. Look, I could say I knew you when, Rob.
Look, the important thing, I got college credit for that.
That's right, you did.
If I did not get your wallet, I would have been one credit hour shy of graduating from Marquette, and who knows where I could have been today.
I changed your entire... I'm glad you acknowledge that, Rob. I really do. Look, I hope the family's well. I got to see you a short time ago, actually probably before COVID with the family, but the kids, I'm sure, have grown up at this point. Maybe I'll see you. We're coming up. Lex and I might be coming up next week. So I may text you and see if we can swing by, at least say hi.
Yeah, that'd be great because we're keeping the northwest suburbs safe for you.
Awesome. All my fond memories when I was a kid is going to the railroad tracks behind my house in Park Ridge and flattening pennies. I don't think my mom and dad knew I was doing that, but it was a lot of fun at the time. We'll see you, Rob. Take care.
All right, talk to you soon.
See you.
On the roads, if you are westbound on 70, some volume at Jennings Station Road, a little bit past the airport at 141 at K and out at Wentzville. Now, 64 is worse, but it's just approaching Kings Highway out through McCausland, which is the usual, but it's pretty slow through there. Slowing again at Lindbergh, eastbound jams at Clarkson, and then westbound picks up again, a little bit at K, and then from Highway N out through the 70 split. Southbound 270, slow pockets approaching Olive. Now, this is pockets, but it does go down through 21. Southbound 141, jams at 64 and at 44. And 44 looks like it's pretty slow in the depressed section right in front of the Arch grounds. And it looks like that's east and westbound. And some volume on the Illinois side as well, all due to road work. 64 at 255 and 55-64 at 70. I'm Sue Thomas, and this report is brought to you by Lakeside Renovation and Design. For over 25 years, they have been St. Louis's trusted choice for transforming homes. They do everything from kitchens to baths, and they deliver quality craftsmanship and lifetime warranties. Go to lakesiderd.com. That's Traffic 97.1 FM Talk, St. Louis Conservative.
Oh, we do have some breaking news that we found out about just about 25 minutes ago. CENTCOM, U.S. Central Command, announced on X, formerly Twitter, the forces began launching self-defense strikes against Iran at 4 p.m. this afternoon, 5 p.m. Eastern Time, at the Commander-in-Chief's direction in response to yesterday's downing of a U.S. Army Apache helicopter. The tweet says the mission is proportional response to unjustified Iranian aggression. We don't really have any more news on that. There's some sounds of explosions in one port area of Iran in Shriek, but we'll keep you posted on that. Let me invite you to what we're doing next Tuesday night. I guess it's a week from tonight at the DoubleTree by Hilton out off of Swingley Road. And that's when we're going to get together with the team from the Retirement Advisory Group. We do 6 of these a year. I think this is going to be number 3 already. And I also might have been lying. I think we might do 5 a year. See, I'm not good at math. The point is if you're concerned about your retirement, if you're looking for a different direction, if you've heard Thomas and the team at the Retirement Advisory Group say they've never lost a client a penny of their money, we'll find out how this is possible. They will teach you the philosophy of safely linking to the market. This is a free event at the DoubleTree. All we need to know is that you're coming because you just need to register. We save you a seat. A lot of people more comfortable in the group setting that we'll have on Tuesday. If you want to go one-on-one, that's super easy. You can register online at retirementkey.com or call them at 314-993-9494. We know the market's been kind of up and down. Bob Kershaw, who is the nephew of Thomas, is going to be here tomorrow. I think he'll be on Annie's show and then talking to me about the seminar next Tuesday night. Retirementkey.com to get set up and get signed up. Let me share a story here that's, kind of maybe tragic and sad is where we're heading. I hope it's not, but just as like a warning to other people, just a strange story. So I haven't shared this with you yet. So I mentioned to Rob that I might be going to Chicago next week to see my family, and my sister reached out yesterday, her brother-in-law, and I just want to share this, not because of personal reasons, just because I think people experience stuff like this, and maybe they don't get it checked, and if they do get it checked, something could prevent worse things from happening. So out of nowhere, my sister's brother-in-law, her husband's brother, who is early retired, really done well for himself, has a big, giant property in Florida and also one in Chicago. He was having back pains, right? And it was kind of weird, and he didn't know what was going on, but he knew that he had a checkup last Wednesday, just coincidentally had been set up for a physical, right? So they do blood work, and he doesn't really even tie the back pain in. I think he mentions it. Well, they determined very quickly that his cells are off and that he has a form of, it's not liver cancer, but kidney, possibly kidney cancer. And apparently if it gets to the liver, it's really bad. So this just all happened last week, and now the family is, they don't know what's going on. They don't have answers. They're waiting on a biopsy. But the only reason I share the story, twofold. One, because I've heard a lot of stories like this where people have something. If your body is telling you something, you got to listen to it, right? So if you have unusual pain, and what happened with this family member of my sister's is there were blood clots that they had determined too. So they're very concerned about those because that can turn into, well, you could stroke out or something along those lines. So again, it's a situation where they don't have all the answers. They don't know everything that's going on. They did, because my sister said, well, they did a biopsy. I'm like, well, what does that say? Because it already told you that there's cancer involved. Well, I guess it focuses a little bit more on where it is, and they've done some ultrasounds and stuff like that. It's just a scary story, and I guess my advice is if your body is telling you something, you got weird pain or things happening, get it checked out because that might end up, saving your life. Think about if this, hopefully this is going to turn out well though, but if he didn't have that appointment, which is again, totally coincidental, he wouldn't have found out about this, right? Could have ignored it for a longer period. Yeah, I just thought it was odd. Did you hear the insufferable comments, because you were off yesterday, of Scott Pelley on his dismissal? No. Have you not heard any of this? Because it's quite something. And I only got into this late in the day yesterday because they released this audio from the sit-down that he did with a New York Times reporter. But I think any credibility that Scott Pelley thought he had before he was canned by Barry Weiss and the new leadership at CBS News is completely out the door. Now, in the meeting that he caused trouble at last week, we found out that he said he loves this word murdered. He's accusing Barry Weiss of murdering 60 Minutes and CBS News. And it goes beyond that. I think this is one of the more bizarre responses that I've ever heard from anyone losing their job. You tell me, Sue.
Well, if we want to talk about it at an emotional level, the best thing that I can imagine in terms of describing it is that it's like your spouse was murdered. I do want to be clear that I do not feel sorry for me. I don't care about me. I'm fine. I care about these people that I left behind.
It's like a spouse was murdered?
How is that even remotely?
It's not.
That's
Sue.
how not in touch he is.
Yeah, and he used that word several times, so it's not like it was just misspeaking. He knows what he's saying. That is outrageous. Like, what in the New York Times, to the credit of the reporter at the New York Times, you haven't heard any of this, I guess. Let me, because she pushes back and says, Scott, I mean, come on. Because he says he was blindsided. I'm like, come on. No, exactly. So listen to this.
Me about that meeting and if you were at that point going in expecting to be fired?
Oh, gosh. Furthest thing from my mind. It hadn't occurred to me.
But it really didn't occur to you that you could be fired after so many of your colleagues had been let go, after you'd had this, very contentious interaction with your new boss?
Some reporter I turned out to be.
Exactly.
I just didn't connect the dots.
How could you be that naive?
I'll tell you how. He thinks he's above it.
He thinks he's better than the
network.
network.
They all think that they are above it, that they're so necessary, and that they are so valued, and no one else could possibly do.
The arrogance of Scott Pelley that has been on display in the last week has been beyond what I think I even anticipated. Now, this is another one of my favorites because he acts like the claims of bias are coming out of nowhere. In fact, I tweeted this yesterday. And I couldn't believe that this was actually a headline from a story related to Scott Pelley. And this is what's sad, that most people in this country who aren't dialed into a show like this or don't listen to anything that covers the topic of media bias, they don't realize the level at which it is, insidious in that particular network and others. So there's a quote from Scott Pelley where he goes, "There's a subtle political bias that I've never seen at 60 Minutes or at CBS News before." My response was, apparently he's never watched his own show. He's actually making the case after decades of not subtle political bias, out of blatant political bias, that he is now blindsided by the fact that Barry Weiss is injecting fairness into the newsroom. So listen to this exchange.
What was the feeling about that particular opening salvo to the team?
She, I am told, said something to the effect of, "Why do you think the country thinks you're biased?" But she didn't offer any kind of a metric. What's your metric? Why do you think so? Do you have a poll? Is there market research? What are you talking about? because we certainly didn't believe that.
By the way,
unbelievable,
Scott, there is a poll. There are a lot of polls.
Yes,
and what
Google
they show is that you are trusted less than people in Congress, or at least on par, and those are bad numbers. But for him to sit there and act like there's been, I mean, what I wish they would have done is, and we had Tiffany Justice on yesterday from Moms for Liberty, because she was put under the ringer from Scott Pelley in a complete hit piece. And what I said at the time is, look, I said this yesterday, you want to ask tough questions of someone that you're interviewing a story, that's fair. I wish reporters would do that. But you can't just ask tough questions of one side and then have Joe Biden and do a feature on him 2 years ago and go against all the folks out there that know that he is declining both mentally and physical, and do this big puff piece like he's the best thing that's ever happened to the White House, because that's what Scott Pelley did. And not realizing the different standards that he applies to different stories, that's beyond comprehension for me.
And then to ignore like it never happened, never to go back and say, boy, we did report on that. Boy, that has been proven wrong.
I'm exhausted about talking about the Bill Whitaker story, but that is, journalistic malpractice 101. Just pull it up on Paramount Plus when he came to St. Louis. You tell me if there's any fairness in that story. I'll save you the time. There's not.
Southbound 170, really pretty slow between Olive and 64. Westbound 6440, that's a slow go. It's approaching Kings Highway out through McCausland. Eastbound and westbound, a little slow at Clarkson tonight, and then some slow pockets westbound out through 70. Now, 70 westbound, moderate volume at Jennings Station Road past the airport, and then some volume in pockets out through the 64 split. 44 westbound, slowing in front of the Arch grounds. Eastbound, a little slow through there as well. And on the Illinois side, some volume eastbound 5564. This is due to an accident now near Exchange. 70 eastbound slowing at 64. 64 eastbound slow approaching 157. And that is due to road work. I'm Sue Thomas. That's traffic. 97.1 FM Talk, St. Louis Conservative.
All right, we got an amazing offer for you if you're interested in buying a home. And maybe you're on the sidelines because you don't think that you want to buy a home with the rates as high as they are. And even though historically this is maybe where rates should be, they got very low for a long time and people got spoiled. But Stewie at Stewart's American Mortgage has a great offer for you. It's a limited time offer for clients who are purchasing a home. We can talk about refis in a moment. But if you're purchasing a home, he's offering you a 1% discount on your interest rate for the first year of the loan. So for the first year of a new 30-year mortgage, you lock in a 1% lower interest rate, and you still get the bagel loan, so you get no closing costs. That's a great offer. It's limited if for new, buyers for purchase only, not for refis. Now let's talk about refis, because he still has the bagel loan, and even if you think that the rates are too high, when you're not paying the appraisal fees, closing costs, title fees, and broker fees, you may be surprised at where you land with the math. So if you want to get in touch with him, and there's no reason whatsoever, you shouldn't reach out, at least ask questions. Get yourself educated about what they do. Quick closes, too, as little as 10 days. Talk to Stewie. I'm going to give you his cell phone number right now. He'd love to have a conversation. He's very, very interesting, engaging, got a lot of passion for what he does, and he's exceptionally good at what he does. 314-324-4440, NMLS number 226715. Stewart's American Mortgage. Get with him today.
This is a Fox News alert. A new round of strikes against Iran. I'm Lisa Lacera. This coming hours after President Trump promised a response after the downing of a U.S. military helicopter in the Strait of Hormuz. CENTCOM says the strikes are a proportional response to what it called unjustified aggression.
What we're looking at right now, there are some indications there's some explosions in a port city called Sirik. We're getting the initial reports of ongoing strikes from the Iranians themselves. The Iranian foreign minister earlier today had warned that if the U.S. escalated, there would be a very, very big response.
Fox's Jennifer Griffin in Washington. Demonstrations turning angry after Texas teenager Carmelo Anthony was found guilty of murder in the stabbing death of Austin Metcalf during a confrontation at a track meet last year.
Protesters are on both sides, definitely mostly Carmelo Anthony. I see signs saying justice for Austin. So you have Austin Metcalf supporters here, too.
Fox's Brooke Taylor outside the courthouse in McKinney, Texas. The same jury that found Anthony guilty is now deciding his sentence. He could get as much as 99 years in prison. In the House.
On this vote, the yeas are 214. The nays are 212. The bill is passed. Without objection, a motion to reconsider is laid on the table.
Lawmakers passing a bill that would provide $70 billion for immigration enforcement. The measure funds ICE and Customs and Border Protection for the next 3 years. The bill got sidetracked. Over $1 billion for White House security, including for the White House ballroom, and a $1.8 billion fund that would have compensated President Trump's allies who claim they have been unjustly investigated and prosecuted. Those proposals were scrapped. Wall Street, another roller coaster day for stocks. The Dow adds 86, the Nasdaq minus 250. America is listening to Fox News.
My name is Whitney Allen, and I'm a widow. My husband, Ryan, died. We never thought we'd ever have to use life insurance, but the unexpected happened. With Ethos, signing up was fast and 100% online. You can get a quote in seconds, apply in minutes, and get same-day coverage. No medical exams, and you can get up to $3 million worth of coverage. I'm grateful we were prepared.
Get your free quote at ethos.com/term. That's ethos.com/term. Paid spokesperson. Time spent on application may vary. Online health questions required.
Finding great candidates to hire can be like, well, trying to find a needle in a haystack, but not with ZipRecruiter. Its powerful technology actively finds and invites qualified candidates to apply to your job. So while other companies might deliver a lot of hay, ZipRecruiter finds you the needle in the haystack.
See why 4 out of 5 employers who post a job on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. Try ZipRecruiter for free at ZipRecruiter.com/free. That's ZipRecruiter.com/free.
ZipRecruiter.
All right, we have a fair amount of breaking news right now. CENTCOM announced a little after 4 o'clock Central Time, at the direction of the Commander-in-Chief, President Trump, they have responded to the downing of the U.S. Army Apache helicopter. And the CENTCOM tweet says the mission is a proportional response to unjustified Iranian aggression. Jen Griffin at Fox reporting on this a short time ago.
We've just gotten word that based on that CENTCOM statement, we had extended this. The president had indicated that he must respond given that there were 2 Americans in that Apache helicopter that had to be rescued at sea earlier today. So we were expecting this, but what's interesting from the statement that CENTCOM just put out is that it described these as defensive strikes. strikes, and they said that they would be proportional. So what we're looking at right now, there are some indications there's some explosions in a port city called Sirik. We're getting the initial reports of ongoing strikes from the Iranians themselves. The Iranian foreign minister earlier today had warned that if the U.S. escalated, there would be a very, very big response.
By the way, something just as a side note, this is crazy. The downed Apache crew that you heard her reference to, they were rescued by a drone, by some drone vessels that were in the water. So we don't know everything that's going on right now. Jacob Olidort is back with us, Chief Research Officer and Director of American Security at the America First Policy Institute. Jacob, welcome back. How are you this evening?
Mark, doing well. Privileged to be with you. Thank you.
I suppose we thought, because President Trump made it very clear that there was going to be some response to the downing of the Apache. And I don't know what proportional, response means this afternoon. You heard the reference to the port maybe being attacked, but what are your expectations for what might be done or what's going on currently right now?
Right. First of all, I mean, it's certainly an important side note about the drone technology being used. But I think the larger point, look, the rhetoric matters and the framing of these strikes matters. And so I think the United States is sending a very clear message to the Iranians. First of all, any harm to Americans, as the president said over the weekend, will be responded to by the United States. But it's giving Iran an off-ramp. By calling it defensive, proportionate, we are not saying that this is the totality of the response, should there be more. But look, we will respond, and that's sort of the message here.
I don't think if you were to ask me, use a word that you think would, very accurately describe Donald J. Trump, I don't think patience would even be in my top 100 words, right? But he's being very, and I think a little bit more patient than I expected. Here's Mark Thiessen talking about this.
He's incredibly patient. The problem is, as great a deal maker as Donald Trump is, you have to have a negotiating partner who's willing to make a deal with you. And in Iran, it's very clear that he doesn't have a negotiating partner because there's no Delcy Rodriguez. When you're talking about moderates versus, it's like saying that we killed Hitler and now we've got the really bad Nazis, or now we've got the moderate Nazis. There's no moderate Nazis, and there are no moderate Iranian Islamic radicals. And so you have to finish them militarily. And quite frankly, what's dangerous for the Republican Party going into the midterms is having this muddled situation going into the midterms. It has to end decisively in some way.
Well, I kind of agree with Mark there. And, I don't know if there's a sense that Trump is talking to the right people, because you wouldn't ordinarily see him, with this much patience in a situation like this. Would you agree?
All right. Well, and with no visibility, of course. But I think, look, it's patience. It's also a plan. And there's a clear, and it has to be a comprehensive approach, which it is for this president. There is, you've heard the phrase multidimensional chess going on. There are different aspects of the regime and what it does. And I think it's important what Mark Thiessen outlined, that we are not playing the fictional language game that the Obama team played of moderates versus radicals. I think this administration knows exactly who they're dealing with. And I think that they have been calibrating the economic, diplomatic, and military now pressure points exactly right to meet that overall plan.
So where does Israel fall into this? We know that a week ago this was all confirmed. Trump did not like what Bibi was doing with Hezbollah, called them crazy. They both kind of came out of that, confirming that the account took place and that Trump wasn't happy with them. Mentioned that a couple of times last week. What is the current situation, do you think, with Israel? Because there were more strikes on southern Lebanon today by the Israelis too.
Yeah. Well, look, and I don't know, obviously we don't know what the totality of what the president said to the prime minister. I mean, there's a lot of reporting out there, which is, partial at best. But I think the bigger story here over the weekend, which I think is important for listeners, this is the first time that Iran fired at Israel in response to Israel launching strikes into Lebanon. And that's important. Usually it was in response to Israel firing directly at Iran. The message Iran is sending there is that it cares about the survival of Hezbollah maybe just as much as its dreams of its nuclear ambitions. And I think that's important, and that's probably the tension point on the regime side. They have been making sure and pushing for Lebanon to be part of any negotiations. They understand that Hezbollah, I would call it, is existential to this regime's global terror network, including the U.S., including Western Hemisphere, Europe. All of that, and of course the Middle East, is coordinated through Hezbollah. And so if they lose Hezbollah and leverage there, they're significantly diminished in terms of what they're able to accomplish.
And I don't know why. So then the question is, why wouldn't you want to minimize that as much as possible, right?
Well, that's right. And look, we all have distinct Israel has let's say, a strategic existential priority in eradicating Hezbollah, its own threats from there. It's on their border with 100,000 missiles directly pointed at Israeli cities. But look, Hezbollah is responsible for the largest attack on U.S. Marines since the Battle of Iwo Jima, and that is the 1983 Marine Barracks.
That's right.
So this is part of our memory, our experience. And so, to your point, yeah.
So do you here missing in this conversation, and this is where I still get confused about how this might end. You can go in there and pound them more with bombs, and we know, I think we're pretty sure and convinced that the economic pressure from the blockade is doing immense damage to the economy, but we're still not really figuring out how to get the highly enriched uranium out of there.
Right. And there are a couple of pieces there, of course. I mean, look, at the end of the day, it may not be limited to the uranium itself, and we want a commitment from this regime that they will abandon their nuclear ambitions, which is a very tall order, but that is, the threshold, I think, that we're thinking about. But, part of it, look, it's a complex issue. I believe, and I have something I'm putting together in writing about Lebanon as a piece of this and Hezbollah as the path to the end state. I think the economic tools and pressure will remain. I think the blockade is working. So I think this will all take time. What will the outcome be as far as the Iranian regime is concerned? All that is unknown yet. But all that, the president's been clear he's not rushing into a bad deal. And so I think we need to give the space to the administration to work through the negotiation. And as we're seeing today, respond as appropriate when necessary too.
Yeah, this is all, and I think this, the framework, or maybe not the framework, but what's happening behind the scenes here politically is also interesting because, look, the president is finding himself in a position with a lot of people who supported this, action to begin with, and certainly the goals of what he's trying to achieve in Iran. But they're also running out of patience from the perspective of there needs to be an end to this at this point, and that path is not clear. And to your point, the president wants to get not a deal, he wants to get the best deal, he wants to get a good deal. But when you set expectations in the way that he did, I think that's where there's risk. Now we're going to get into, look, it won't be too long before we're at the 4th of July. It's only a few weeks away, and the clock is ticking very, very quickly toward, the midterms. Now, he doesn't seem concerned about that because he's not doing this for political reasons. But people behind the scenes, there's Republicans very nervous about this right now.
Right. No, and you and I have talked multiple weeks about this topic. And look, I think the reality is the Iranian regime is reading the politics closely. They believe they can use American domestic politics against the president, which obviously is misleading. But I think part of our response and awareness, look, there is pain, and no question about it, but there's a bigger picture too. And I think that's important because when we look, for example, at the Strait of Hormuz, on which we rely very little directly, of course, energy is a global commodity. But, at the end of the day, and you've had CEOs say this as well, the risks of not doing this or of stopping too soon may mean the prices may be higher in the long term for longer. And so what we're doing now vis-a-vis Iran, yes, it's pain in the immediate, but it has global effect and making our economic picture more stable, our well-being more stable. If you think about, the Strait of Hormuz, you think about, Iran's connectivity with Russia, which is also destabilized, global energy there. You think about the Western Hemisphere, all of that, and even China, comes back to addressing this Iran issue, which we're right in the thick of right now.
No, that's a fair point, Jacob, because look, as you point out, in geopolitics, I'm not an expert on geopolitics, right? But this is extremely complicated, very complicated globally.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Appreciate the reporting. Thank you so much for coming on again with me this afternoon.
Thank you, sir.
Take care.
Thank you,
That's Jacob Olidort. I want to kind of circle back just because the one part of this story, and this kind of ties in with what we're going to do with George Rosenthal with Tech Talk Tuesdays. I mentioned this on the intro to Jacob there, though. This was a first of its kind U.S. military drone rescue that helped save these two aviators today. So the helicopter crashes near the Strait of Hormuz, and an unmanned Navy vessel locates the downed crew, brings them to safety after they're in the water for like 2 hours.
Whoa.
I know that you're floating and you seem safe, but still, that's a long time to be hanging out in the middle of the ocean off the coast of Oman. Military officials say it was the first known at-sea rescue conducted by the U.S. military drone. That's amazing, isn't it? It's a 24-foot autonomous vessel. It's known as the Corsair and built by Saronic Technologies. It's assigned to the Naval's Task Force 59, the service's pioneering unit focused on uncrewed. Faux pas. Uncrewed.
Gotcha.
It looked like unscrewed, though. Uncrewed and artificial intelligence-powered maritime operations. That's cool, though.
It is cool.
This thing goes down. Okay, let's send the drone to pick them up.
I think that obviously that's the future.
It is.
And boots on the ground, I would assume, will just become a less and less necessary thing as we figure all this stuff out.
I think you're right about that, which is a good thing. Yeah, modern warfare is changing dramatically, but this whole situation with Iran is still not, totally in modern warfare because they're dropping bombs and shooting helicopters out of the sky and things like that. A little bit more reporting here from Jen Griffin. She's really good at Fox on some of this stuff, talking about the talks ongoing.
Well, we've just learned from a senior U.S. defense official that the strikes are ongoing as we speak right now, and that some of the targets that we can confirm at this point are air defense systems inside Iran as well as radar installations. The initial explosions that we've seen reported on X out of Iranian sources suggest that Sirik, which is a port city, as well as Bandar Abbas were among the targets. But what we can say at this point is that these airstrikes are ongoing. Flight trackers have seen about 8 KC-135 air refueling tankers above the Middle East, over the Gulf. Presumably, they would be in position to help refuel these American warplanes.
One of the questions then they had was about the Iranian drones.
Well, I think the problem with the drones is that they're mobile and they can be launched mobily. They do see them when they're launched, and I was told earlier today that they saw multiple drones being launched around the time that the Apache went down. In terms of proportion, so far, what we are seeing and hearing reported, if you're talking air defenses, that would fit in the CENTCOM statement that these are defensive strikes and going after the radar. But it also could indicate that you would always take out the air defenses and radar installations before you had another wave of strikes, before you put American warplanes into any harm's way. So it's really unclear at this point, but what we can say is that the airstrikes targeting Iran are ongoing at this point.
Yeah, and again, this is something that's just been ongoing for the last hour. It was 4 p.m. Central when CENTCOM announced the strike. So it's still very much an active situation. And I love Jen. She's really good at this stuff. We'll stay on top of it as it is breaking news this evening on 97.1 FM Talk.
Well, let's see. We look good through North County right now. If you are an eastbound 270 driver, really no delays. Westbound 70 out of downtown is fine. Slow pockets, though, past the airport, out through the 64 split. And 6440, it's slow pockets. It starts right around Kings Highway. And then you get a break after McCausland, and then a little slow at 270, and then from 94 in pockets out through the 70 split. And it's slow pockets on southbound 270 from Olive through Doherty Ferry. We've got southbound 141. Well, actually, that's southbound Clarkson, south of 64. That's really slow in that area. 55 looks good. 44, a little bit of volume at 141. And we've got westbound 44 slowing in front of the Arch grounds. On the Illinois side, eastbound 64 jams headed for 157. We've got road work 5570 64, and that is causing delays as well. This report is brought to you by Barron Mirror Glass and Door. Simply the finest when it comes to mirror glass and shower doors. They have the largest, most beautiful showroom in Chesterfield Valley. They have custom designs. It's full of the latest that you want to see. There you'll see why they say creativity unlimited, quality unsurpassed. I'm Sue Thomas. That's Traffic 97.1 FM Talk, St. Louis Conservative.
All right, Tech Talk Tuesday, George Rosenthal coming up here at the bottom of the hour. Earlier this afternoon, I had Frannie Block on from the Free Press. I'm a huge fan of the FP. Barry Weiss started this. CBS bought it for $100 million. They made her head of CBS News, but they do have different types of content. And as I always say with the Free Press, it's not like a daily newspaper where you go up there and every day everything is different. The reporting kind of lingers up there, and they have a lot of first-person accounts. You know, this is where Jamie Reed, our whistleblower from right here in St. Louis, came to notoriety because she put her whistleblower report, and that first piece was in the Free Press. So, Sue, I know you have opinions about GLP-1s. We've talked about these weight loss medications. They're controversial. It seems like a lot of people who even don't need to be on them are on them. So, Blossom, Mayim Bialik, has written a fascinating piece.
Oh, and she's
that
smart.
It just cleared in the FP like minutes ago. And it's headlined My GLP-1 Nightmare. Now, her story is a little more complicated. Now, at the beginning here, she shows a little history about herself. If people don't know, she says, I grew up in the limelight with my appearance scrutinized weekly from the time I started my own NBC show at 14. I was blissfully unaware of my weight back then. I was naturally lanky and athletic, and I ate whatever I wanted to with no concern for weight gain. All that changed when I was a teenager. I was put on medication to manage my moods, and weight gain followed me from there. By my 40s, still actively working as an actress, I acquired a deep sense of shame around my body. At size 6, I felt obese. By the time social media arrived with its fixation on being thinner, more toned, more surgically perfected, that pressure tipped into a disordered relationship with food that I've spent years trying to untangle. And I think this is very, very common in Hollywood with people, right?
Oh,
she
sure.
mentions that early menopause did not help. She's put 20 pounds on that she doesn't need. She says, I don't have the discipline, motivation, or time to lose them. Still, she says, that's not why I went on GLP-1. I went on a weight loss drug because a doctor told her that it might ease symptoms that she struggled with her entire adult life. So she was diagnosed with an autoimmune condition, Graves' disease. I've heard about this before, at the height of her health when she was 23. The immune system forgot that her thyroid was part of her body. It attacked it. It sent it into an overactive storm. She says it made her very, very sick. They got strong medications to work on it. In 1998, there was no discussion of diet or lifestyle or anything
for heaven's sakes.
that we know. Well, no, she was saying on anything that could influence autoimmune conditions, right? And she admits that maybe she did things that slowly made that condition worse. She had 4 unexplained hernias, 4 exploratory surgeries. This is 25 years later. She is well past perimenopause and drowning in symptoms that she can't explain. She had full body rashes and welts, severe histamine reactions to foods and smells, palpitations, hourly wake-ups for an entire year, crying jags. I mean, she was a mess, right? And she talks about how, these things came about and people couldn't really explain. There was a larger breakdown that occurred with all these things, but they couldn't really dial into what was wrong, right? So months ago, 3 separate doctors all suggest to Mayim Bialik that she tries a GLP-1, not because of the 20 pounds, but because the drugs have shown promise in reducing the systemic inflammation that drives autoimmune conditions. And she says by that point, she spent years of trying everything from hyperbaric chambers, infrared saunas, to detox medications and infusions. She says in this piece, I was exhausted from being sick, from the endless parade of specialists, from the diets, the protocols, the promises. Maybe this could be the magic cure, right? And she says, look, I know that 1 in 8, this is crazy, 1 in 8 Americans are taking them. Ads for Ozempic and Wegovy blanket our social media feeds. You know that, right?
Yeah.
You have Hollywood that can barely keep up with itself. Celebrities turning up unrecognizably thin on red carpets. I talked about Ryan Seacrest. His face just looks weird, and he wasn't fat, right? She says, I know many women who would not be considered overweight by any reasonable measure, but they're on these drugs because in LA, and unfortunately this is true, anything over a size 4 is considered hefty. She says one acquaintance was thrilled that her GLP-1 made her so nauseous that she was barely able to eat it all because it meant that the pounds fell away even faster, leaving her thinner and happier than that she had ever been. Another friend described the quieting of what those of us with disordered eating call food noise, the relentless mental chatter that accompanies every meal. So she kind of closes that chapter by saying, GLP-1s have helped people, of that I am certain, but nobody talks about what happens when it goes wrong. And this is where it gets really, really scary. She says, I took one shot of the lowest dose of a synthetic GLP-1, and to say I had an adverse reaction would be somewhat of an understatement. Explosive, uncontrollable diarrhea, sulfur burps so violent they left me afraid to open my mouth in public, sneezing attacks every time I tried to eat or drink, which apparently has a name, snatchi. It's SNATITION. Snatchiation, cramping, bloating, full body aching as though I had the flu, and an inability to keep down even small sips of water without sprinting to the bathroom with yet more explosive diarrhea. And this goes on. And apparently it was a really, really bad, closer to an allergic reaction that she had maybe once for a sinus infection. But this went on. And for the first 2 days, she says, I ate maybe 1 cup of rice and a half a banana and some broth. She couldn't, get electrolytes down. So she really, really had a bad experience. But the broader point here is that her experience, as it turns out, she says, is far from rare. Nausea, vomiting, diarrhea are among the most commonly reported complaints with GLP-1s in the clinical trials. So this is I got to get to George here with Tech Talk Tuesday, but this is crazy because she's very, very, personal about this. She, she admits that, the medications are disruptive to the body. They know that. There's always, you can hear it in the ads. There's, bad things that can happen from any drugs. But she said that one doctor said expect a full month of alternating diarrhea and constipation, hopefully at decreasing frequency. Eat bland foods, drink water, don't get dehydrated. And then he also says some of the medications that she was already on are complicating her gut health. So she says, how many of us are on medications that are hurting us, causing inflammation, wreaking havoc on our symptoms, and then pile on more medications to manage the symptoms of those medications? I believe that's a rhetorical question. I think the answer to that is way, way, way too many people. I'm going to tweet that out. That column just cleared at the Free Press. It's frightening, but people should know about it.
Westbound 70 looks good out of downtown, but there is some volume around 141 in both directions, and then some slow pockets here and there out through the 70-64 split. Now, it's worse on 64. It's lined up Kings Highway out past McCausland. We have an accident reported westbound 6440 at Clayton Warson, and that's created a jam. And another one eastbound just east of McKnight, which has also created a jam. So a slow go in that area. Southbound 270 slowing now in pockets from near Olive down through Doherty Ferry before it looks better. Out west, some moderate volume on 64, headed for 70. On the Illinois side, eastbound 70 slowing at the 64-55 split. And eastbound 64 slow approaching 157. That due to road work. This report is brought to you by Overhead Door Company of St. Louis. Call them for their 26-point tune-up. It's just one price for up to 3 garage doors and openers. Always look for the genuine original red ribbon. Schedule online, overheaddoorstlewis.com. I'm Sue Thomas. That's traffic. 97.1 FM Talk, St. Louis Conservative.
And this portion of the show is sponsored by Jerry Kelly Heating, Air Conditioning, Electrical, and Plumbing.
Tech Talk Tuesday with George Rosenthal of ThrottleNet. ThrottleNet.com.
Well, here he is, ladies and gentlemen, George Rosenthal, who a week ago sat down with me, gave me a great class on AI, and I've done none of the homework. I have failed you, George Rosenthal.
Come on.
I'm still intimidated by it. I haven't taken the steps, and I apologize.
Oh, man, that's okay. That's okay. It's great to talk to you guys again. That's all right. Look, it's a slow process. I think you're along with 90% of the population is slowly starting to get into it. But look, just take baby steps, start asking it how it can help you with every single thing you do. So when you do something throughout the day, work, home, when you think about your health, your workouts, your food, your diets, whatever you think about that day, just ask AI real quickly, how can you help me with this? And it'll tell you. And eventually you'll start to get to know it really well.
I'm going to do this here in about an hour from now. I'll be at Family Golf. And I'm going to say, Claude, how can I hit my damn driver straight? And he's going to fix it for me, right?
Oh, yeah.
There you go.
Okay, good. That's my plan. All right. On a serious note, though, look, you talked about this last week, and now we know there was, some announcement yesterday at this big Apple event that Siri, which I think has been very non-reliable lately, has been rebuilt by Google, right? So we're getting some AI changes with Apple working with Google.
So excited about this. I cannot even express to you. I'm like walking on water. So excited. So this is the biggest announcement for the iPhone in a long time, probably 10 years. And I hate to say this, but goodbye, Tim Cook. Sorry, buddy, but that was your last keynote speech. You did a great job with raising the revenue of the company, but there was no innovation until basically now. They're copying what Microsoft did. So instead of creating their own AI, they're going out now and they're hiring basically their biggest competitor. They're paying Google $1 billion a year for this. So Gemini is going to run Siri, and it gets a little bit better. Give me a couple seconds. So this is a total overhaul of your entire phone. Your phone is literally about to become the most highly hyper-personalized, context-aware executive assistant you've possibly had. And everything that I talked to you about last week in AI at the office is about to be in your phone in a crazy way. It's going to use the camera and look at your eyes and see what apps you're looking at. It's going to know what you're using on the regular and help you with it. You're going to be able to talk to your phone and ask it which app is best for the situation you're trying to do. And then what's even greater about all of this is that this is something revolutionary that when it comes to Apple, because Apple's very good at dictating the hardware and the software that they want you to use. This is crazy. They're going to allow Anthropic, which is Claude, and ChatGPT, along with Gemini, into the operating system, into the iOS. So you're going to be able to choose whether you want Gemini, Claude, or OpenAI on your phone. And that is revolutionary because Apple's always dictated what you're going to use and how you're going to use it. Even though they're paying Google $1 billion a year, you're still going to be able to choose between the three of them. Now, the bummer is, and this is, I don't think this is intentional, but like we talked about last week, is that the hardware that you're allowed to have is going to be limiting the capabilities of what's happening. Now, there's iOS 27 is coming on. This, by the way, let me back up a second. This is all starting in September. So in September, you're going to get the big launch of iOS 27. Now, if you have an Apple 15, an iPhone 15, an iPhone 16, an iPhone 14, 13, you'll be fine with iOS 27. But it's the AI capabilities that will not be available to everybody. So if you have a 15 or a 16 Pro, you'll get very limited AI capabilities. If you have a 17 and what's about to be the newest iPhone announced in September, then yes, you'll have full AI capabilities that will help you with everything you're doing in all of the devices, iPads, MacBooks. Now, the MacBook does need the M3 chip or greater, so just keep that in mind if you're a MacBook user. Make sure you have the M3 chip or greater. But the capabilities that is about to change with all of your Apple devices is going to be revolutionary.
Okay, so just to be clear on when this happens, so it's still going to be, the iOS that we're talking about is still in the future.
Yes. So you're really, really anxious. The developer beta, if you're a developer, software developer, it was launched yesterday. Now, the public beta version comes out in July. Even in the tech world and being in my career and everything that I focus on, I still don't do beta on my phone. I don't trust it. There's a lot of bugs. There's a lot of issues. So I will wait until September when they roll out the whole big launch. And that's also when they're going to roll out a new iPhone. So, and that's something where you gotta I would not recommend going into the beta version in July. Just be patient. Come fall, get ready for iOS 27.
Is there a real life example of when you say we'll have our choices between the three? How will that work? When we use Siri will ask us?
Yeah, so it'll be in the settings. You'll be able to change to Claude, or you'll be able to change over to Gemini. And again, what's great now is you have between now and September to start figuring out what AI platform you really like.
Right.
I would literally focus on those three: Gemini, ChatGPT, and Claude. And here's why: because it's all about the AI getting to know you, your habits, your workout habits, your diet, what you do for a living, how your family likes to take vacations, and can it help you plan a trip and do everything that you need to do throughout your day. For example, it will be able to look at your calendar and say, okay, you have 5 different things you have to do today. You have to go over here, you have to go over here. And it'll work with the map application that you use the most, whether it's the Google Maps or whether it's Apple Maps, and then help you plan the route for your entire day that works around the best traffic so you don't get late. It is crazy what this is going to do. It is going to integrate all of your applications into your daily habits and put it in your voice and be able to work with you every single day.
I had a conversation with AI because, of course, me in the Samsung world, on my way in about changing hair and what shampoo I should buy and all of this stuff, George. And I mean, this AI was telling me completely right on stuff.
Really?
Yeah.
You were tested a little.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, Sue's going through a transformation, a hair color transformation. It's a process.
It is a process.
I love it.
It's too in the weeds for me.
Yeah, well, I get it. But I'm saying, okay, well, what does toner do? What does this do? And they would tell me all the way in. And it's like you're having a conversation with a person.
It is. It is.
It's
and
bizarre.
Sue, and let's go a step further, Sue. Let's say you go onto Pinterest, okay, and you start looking up hairstyles and hair colors that you really like, that you think would fit you. You then take a selfie of yourself, put it into the AI, then upload pictures from Pinterest, and it will tell you what it thinks will work best with you and how it's going to transition slowly over time. And do you need to go to a stylist, or can you do this at home?
Yes.
All of these different things are going to be, I'm telling you, it's fascinating, and it's unbelievable that you have a coach on your phone. It is.
Which one do you use? Do you use Gemini?
Gemini's on my phone.
And what do you do? Just talk to it?
Well, it's a Galaxy AI. Well, but yeah, whatever's on my phone. Yes, I just say.
That's Gemini.
I say, okay, well, I don't want to set off phones, but if I just talk to Google, that's what it brings up.
Okay, that makes sense.
And then I search through that, and I have questions, and then at the end he'll say, well, all right, I hope we've helped. Have a safe travel.
Yeah, so he gave me last week, we went through all of the applications, and I have them on my iPad. I really need to do this, and I promise you, by next week I will have done the homework. And I can say that with confidence because I'm off next week, so you really won't be able to test me for 2 weeks.
Okay, can I tell George my nightmare?
Sue's got a story here we need some of your take on. So this is pretty
I
crazy.
was listening, and I heard a brief second of what you said.
Okay, well, it was sometime over the weekend, I got an alert from LifeLock, because I have the most basic LifeLock, and it said somebody is trying to take out a loan in your name. Now, I already have my credit report things frozen, so you can't go get a mortgage in there. But it was a payday loan. So my phone is blowing up from LifeLock. So I call LifeLock, and LifeLock says, oh, yes, we've got a report of this. But you don't have the service with us that allows this to be blocked. Of course I don't, George.
Of course you don't, but that's okay. That's okay.
And he
Here's
said,
what you need to do.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, he said this one, I think it might have been Data X, I don't know, whatever it was, they don't allow LifeLock to intervene. In other words, they can't go on my behalf because they think it's unsafe for an intermediary to get the information, which makes sense. So I had to fill out a report, and then I mail it in and get the credit report, and then that is how LifeLock goes through and gets me my money back. But then my phone is blowing up with, oh, your loan has gone through with blah, blah, borrowly and all this crazy stuff. And it was freaking me out. So I almost called you, and then I thought, well, that's not George's problem. But what should I have done?
No, you definitely should have called me. So the payday lenders, obviously there's three major credit bureaus. The payday lenders use two secret credit bureaus that you need to contact on your own right now. It's called Factor Trust and Clarity Services.
Oh my God.
Factor Trust and Clarity Services.
Okay.
And that is what the payday loan industry uses as their credit bureau, because not everybody who gets a payday loan has a credit score. So that's what's going on there. So you need to go to Factor Trust and Clarity Services immediately. And then also, I would 1,000% as soon as the show is over, contact your bank. Call your bank, tell them what's going on. They'll put you in the Securities and Frauds Department. Tell them what's happening, and they will put a monitor on your bank account. Okay? It's very important you do that.
Okay.
So I'm glad you froze, and I'm glad you froze your credit, because that's the number one thing you have to do is freeze your credit, so no one can take out a car loan, house loan, whatever it may be, or even try and steal the title of your home. So very, very important that you do that. But go to those two credit bureaus, file a report. The last thing I would absolutely do is make sure you go to the government website and file an official report called identitytheft.gov.
Okay.
So I know you have LifeLock. Don't rely on them to do that if you have the basic plan, but go to identitytheft.gov and file a report.
Okay.
If any money goes missing, if your credit score takes a hit, then make sure you file a police report. Okay. Because the only recourse you're going to have is that you actually said, hey, my money was stolen, this wasn't made up, and you have some sort of recourse. But at least you have a police report on file. You don't have to do that yet. Okay. But make sure you go to identitytheft.gov and those two credit bureaus and fill out the information.
Hey, Sue, you have more homework than I do all of a sudden.
know.
You know that, right? I'll see you on Monday. I'll see you next Monday.
My gosh.
My goodness.
I did bump up in LifeLock so that they would prevent.
Of course you did. That's what they wanted you to
that's
do.
how they get you. But that's how to prevent any more of the payday loans. But should I still call Factor Trust and Clarity Services just in case?
100%.
Okay.
Yes, just in case, because if they try it again, then the payday loan industry will see that and go, nope, we're not helping you get a payday loan
George,
with that information.
How do they get the money? Like, in other words, where does that come from? Where do you get a payday loan? Will that go after
They'll falsify a paycheck. They'll falsify a paycheck with your information, your address, your name. They may have a lot of personal identifiable information. And in fact, once we're offline, send me a text. I need to run a dark web scan on you.
Okay.
And make sure I know what's out there for you. So when we're done, send me a text. I'll run a dark web scan for you, let you know what's going on. So at least you're not relying just on LifeLock to do this.
Tech Talk Tuesday is where we scare the hell out of everyone because of things that are happening. All right, hey, I want one. We're short on time because of this, but I did want you to touch on one topic, and we can save maybe a couple of the others for next week. But the way that smart home tech might be tracking you and the effect that it could have on your insurance premium. You shared some of this information.
Yeah.
And this is interesting. Like, so I have, if you have a security company or something like that, and they determine that you're not turning it on as much as you should be, you're saying they may charge you more for that, right? Or flag you.
Yes. This is a massive change in homeowners insurance, and everyone needs to pay attention right now. When you go to renew your homeowners insurance and it's up for renewal, pay attention to whether it's a variable rate. They're going to start doing variable rates across the whole industry based on monitoring your in-home activity with tech. If you have an in-home alarm system, are you setting it on the regular? Do you have water leak detectors, meaning under your sink, your water heaters, your washing machine, your refrigerator water line? If you don't have a water detection system, they can raise your rates. If you're not locking your doors, let's say you have a MyQ door lock or some sort of remote door lock or a keypad for your garage door opener. If you're not constantly using that, they will look at that and say, well, you're endangering your house and we're not insuring you for that low a premium. So this is going to change the whole insurance industry because they're going to look at your personal activities based on the tech in your house. And that's all going with AI. I'm telling you, this is going to change everything.
Whoa.
That's very interesting. And on that note, scaring you, we're out of time. George, great stuff. I'm going to do the homework. We'll talk soon. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. George Rosenthal, ThrottleNet.com.
Okay, this has to be fast. I'm like having
You better
issues.
get out of here.
Okay, there is good news on 6440. They cleared the accident eastbound past McKnight. It was in the left lane. We have a jam behind it. But the one westbound 6440 near Clayton Skinker is still there in the left lane and a jam there. Westbound 70 is lined up approaching 370. And westbound 64, it's mainly moderate volume, but it's still Hampton through McCausland and out at Lake St. Louis Boulevard. This report brought to you by Point with an E Pest Control. I'm Sue Thomas, and that's traffic. 97.1 FM Talk, St. Louis Conservative.
You know, I'm on the website for Susan L. Ward's law firm, stlfamilylaw.com right now. They're a family practice firm. They help you with divorce and the things that happen in the aftermath of divorce, also domestic partnerships and even domestic violence. They have a great blog section on Susan's website at stlfamilylaw.com. And you'll even find some updated information and posts on how the laws have changed here in Missouri. So the Supreme Court recently clarified some third-party custody and visitation rights. There's new changes for equal parenting time and child support in Missouri, and that's something you may want to educate yourself on, and it may even affect your situation. And if you need her help, they can help you. Even on that blog post, there's all kinds of great posts about, what you need to know about relocation in your children, estate planning, really, really good information. And we should also mention it's about the year anniversary of the new office they moved into Parrott, Manchester, in 270. So if you need Susan and her team's help, they're there for you here in St. Louis. They do very, very high quality work with a lot of passion. They're going to help you get through maybe one of the more tougher times you'll ever experience in your life. 314-783-9400, stlfamilylaw.com. The focus on family law and the emphasis on you. All right, so tomorrow night is the annual congressional baseball game in Washington, D.C., and they take this, they do this at Nationals Park. It's a baseball game. It's not a softball game. It's awesome. Eric Schmidt, man, he has been in the cage working on his hitting. He's become one of the stars for the GOP team. He's going to join us. I told him tomorrow, we're not going to talk politics. We're going to talk baseball tomorrow. This game is a lot of fun. I've been there in person. They, I was at the Cardinals game the other night. There were probably... they said 24,000. I don't think there were 24,000 in there. They'll draw 24,000, 27,000 to Nationals Park tomorrow night. A lot of the staffers from Capitol Hill. It's a great event. It's for charity, and it's on TV, too. So we'll get a preview of that tomorrow afternoon. I think that Fred has the roundtable set already for Friday. Former State Senator John Lamping and Ted House will be here as well. All right, I got a couple things here on Audio Cut of the Day.
Stand by. Playback ready. Now, the audio cut of the day.
Okay, this is not one that I anticipated using, but it's something my friend Scott Jennings tweeted this out, and I retweeted it. These are you're going to listen to something here from Ivy League ex-Bernie Sanders staffers who recruited Graham Plattner. And the tone that this interview, really exudes is quite unusual. They seem to think it's funny because they were the ones that were trying to vet Graham Plattner to see if he had any bad things, in his closet.
At this point, you hadn't vetted Graham Plattner. You hadn't done a full scrub of who he is. How did you go about vetting him? And why did you?
We paid a nice firm a whole chunk of money and got some stuff back. Some of what you've seen on the news we got back. Other stuff we didn't.
Did the vetting process turn up the tattoo that became so controversial?
No.
The Reddit posts, did that turn up in the vetting process?
Awkward pause.
The firm sent us a thing, and it had some of the posts, but it didn't have all of them.
How is that possible? Like, who are you paying here to do your vetting, right? So, and these are former Bernie staffers. Right? Keep that in mind.
And what did you think about that? How did you think your way through the fact that he had posted these things on social media?
I said none of this will or should stop him from becoming a U.S. Senator.
And what was your
Clearly the
thinking
voters
there?
agree. I think if what the voters wanted were people who were grown in vats and had never done or said anything that they might regret their entire lives, we'd have a very different country. Part of our thesis here is that people do not want their candidates grown in vats. They want people who are real human beings, and they want people who do not look and sound like the vat-grown people who've been leading this country off a cliff for the last century. And that was Graham.
Well, first of all, that guy has the weirdest voice.
What is going on there?
I don't know, but they're defending. I mean, they're mocking. They're laughing that the vetting process didn't reveal not only the Nazi tattoo but the Reddit posts. Oh, they shared some of them, but they didn't care. I think what the takeaway from that is they don't care. By the way, the last part of his premise is not inaccurate. I think people.
Yes, I agree.
But what they don't. But with Graham Plattner's not that guy.
No.
Okay.
No.
Eric Schmidt is that guy. He really is.
Yes.
He's like a real person. Josh Hawley is not that guy. But Graham Plattner is kind of the opposite of that guy. I guess maybe they think because he's a real guy and he's connecting with people in Maine, but it's outrageous that this guy has been able to get as far as he has. Now, Susan Collins has been keeping her mouth shut about Graham Plattner, and she finally said something.
The allegations against Graham Plattner are extremely troubling and serious, and he owes the people of Maine a detailed answer.
Look, there's more and more stuff that's going to come out. And most of the experts, the pundits inside and outside of Maine think in the end, keep in mind, this is the primary. This is today. He's going to win it, but they think Susan Collins will still hold the seat. There's some theory that Angus King, who is the other senator from Maine who caucuses with the Democrats, but he is an independent, might actually endorse Susan Collins. That would be interesting.
Problems in the Herculaneum area, and northbound 55 is reportedly by MoDOT closed past McNutt because of an accident there. So we have a traffic jam behind it. Essentially, it looks like traffic is being diverted at 67. And that, of course, has a jam behind it while they try to get this cleared. It was an oversized load truck involved in something. So if you can, just avoid that area. Now, that's obviously the worst of it. But we had an accident occur on westbound 6440. Really close to Clayton Skinker, and they've been blocking that left lane, and there's a jam there. The eastbound jam, they cleared that accident near McKnight. That is easing. And other than that, we are in okay shape. 70 westbound okay out of downtown. And we look okay on southbound 270, just some moderate volume at Manchester. I'm Sue Thomas. That's traffic. 97.1 FM Talk, St. Louis Conservative.
You know, we were just talking about politicians kind of keeping it real and authentic, and that's what I love about Mike Reynolds at Michael's Flooring Outlet. Let me give you a small example of that, and I can't even really say this. I won't say the full word on the radio, but if you go to the website at igotfloor.com, you can click on the tab that says About Us, and then it says who we are. You'll get to know a little history of Michael's, the locations, the blog, there's videos, but then it also says the second part of that tab is PO'd. If you're PO'd, they say the whole word, question mark. And they basically say, look, if you are, give us a chance to make it right. If you don't tell us, we don't know about it. Simply enter your thoughts in the form below. We will work to make the situation right and prevent it from happening again in the future. And that's what they do. They take very good care of the customers. They want to make sure that you are satisfied. I'll guarantee you they have the products that you're looking for because they have an unlimited amount of flooring with great technology to fit your lifestyle. They have 3 awesome locations, Old Town St. Peter's, Darden Prairie, and in Creve Coeur in West County on Olive, and then the website that I talked about, which really you can learn a lot, you can get some inspiration, you can contact them, even order samples. IGotFloor.com, Michael's Flooring Outlet.